We'd like to welcome everybody this morning to the start of the BB King Day Symposium. I already had a wonderful time last night. Beautiful people in. So we'll expect people throughout the day. So I hope you hang on. We're going to try to have some fun. But we're just going to open up, play a little blues for you. Hope you enjoy it. We're going to get started with our program as written. Don't worry about it. Sometimes when you have it in church, especially the black church, it starts a little late. But it is all right. Don't worry about anything. It is all right. Dr. Schreiber.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Paul Schreiber.
Well, good morning. My name is Paul Schreiber, and I am Professor of Music Theory, Composition, and Recording Technologies here at the Valley. And on behalf of the university, I'd like to welcome you to the campus of Mississippi Valley State University and to the second annual BB King Day. Or it's actually my fault, third annual BB King Day. Mississippi Valley State University is fundamentally committed to positively impacting the quality of life and creating extraordinary educational opportunities for the Mississippi Delta and beyond. The purpose of the BB King Day is continuing the legacy of BB King in the history of blues. Today's program will focus on the chittlin circuit years. Among today's events, there will be some film, at least I think there is some film, panel discussions, and some musical performances. You just heard one. If there are any committee members in the audience, I think they're actually outside, but I'd like to recognize you because they really, this committee of three, really worked hard. Here's one right here. Please recognize Margaret Clark. Thank you. Also, any members of the administration of Mississippi Valley State University? Or anybody? Okay. And public officials. I'm just going through the numbers here. All right. All of us here at the Valley are proud of the heritage of the blues in the Delta, and we're honored that you are here, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Paul. I'd like to take a little time out to remember, reflect on a few things, and of course there are people dear to all of our hearts, but there were three special guys that were with BB's ensemble who left us, you know. And so Stanley Abernathy, you know, many of us know him as one of the great trumpet players, but had a wonderful heart of expression in this music called the blues. And of course, he played with a number of other people too. And we could go on and on about Stanley's resume, you know, from maybe, he used to talk about how Bobby Bland, you know, gave him permission, you know, to play with BB as well as Otis Clay. Sometimes you have to walk your ranks, you know, and Stanley was one of those guys that walked through the ranks to do it. Booker Walker, you know, very special, dear friend of mine. Well, all of these guys were. We lost Booker. Booker was an interesting character. And many of you might not know him personally, but you can read about him. But Booker and I talked a lot, and he was, I guess, most recognized, you know, for his recording during the Cook County prison recording that BB did. And so February, we lost Caleb Emfrey, and most of us know Caleb, you know, because Caleb was BB's longtime Mississippi companion, you know, for well over 30 years. And there were not a lot of Mississippi traffic that went through BB's band for some reason, I guess because he came out of the Memphis area. And but we got those three guys. If there's anybody else in your life that you think about, you know, want to reminisce, you know, in a minute we're going to have, you know, a little talk about a very important man who lived through the history of this, you know, well over, what, 70 plus years, you know, that we can account for, maybe more than that, by the name of Honey Boy Edwards, you know. But anyway, let's take a short moment of silence, think about that for a minute, and it's just a special thing for me right now. Yeah, thank you. Well, I also have a long list of people that I have to give credit to, and one gentleman, of course, in the house, I want him to stand personally because he's doing such a great job in the Delta with what we're doing. But the Mississippi Delta National Heritage Area, and we have in the room Mr. Rolando Hurt. Just stand up, everybody to see you. He's doing a lot of work over there. And we were very fortunate to get a grant through them to be able to at least get the musicians in town and get them housed and so forth. So a lot of beautiful things. And of course, we have people that you see on the wall like Planters Bank, Harlow's Casino, and we cannot do without All-Star Trophies because for 3 years, they've been instrumental in making sure that we get our Grammy Award guitar that they designed for us. So, and many people will cherish that for the rest of your life, I hope. I do mine. So it's been a beautiful, beautiful expression. Without further ado, we're going to go into the second thing on the program, and this is a very special thing for me as well. And I want to introduce to you Mr. Robert Terrell, who is the operations director at the BB King Museum.
Good morning, good morning. All right, now, so the subject this year is the chittlin circuit. So I have the pleasure of talking about a place that we have in the Delta that was on the chittlin circuit, a part of the chittlin circuit. Club Ebony, if guys have been to Club Ebony, I'm sure, just a little history on it. It opened in 1948. It was the original purchaser of the property, his name was John Jones. He actually built the place, but John Jones purchased the property in 1945. Took him a few years before he got it built. He opened it in 1948. Unfortunately, John Jones didn't get a chance to see his vision all the way through because he passed away in 1950. The next person that got the club, initially I was going to show you guys a PowerPoint, but what I'm going to do now is just go through it. You won't be able to see the photographs, but when you come to the club tonight, I can just kind of take you through that little process so you'll see the beginning of the club, what it looked like in the beginning, what the inside of it looked like, and then you'll go from there to each one of the persons who owned it and into what it looked like today, and then from there. But of course, it was opened in 1948. He passed away in 1950. The next person that took it over, that ran it for a length of time, was a lady named Ruby. Ruby Edwards is a lady that lived in Leland, Mississippi, who also owned another club called Ruby's Night Spot. Ruby came over and ran Club Ebony for a number of years, and that's where B actually met Sue. And I think Sue's in the house. If she's not, she'll be here soon. He met Sue at the club, and I have some photographs of him and Sue in the club when they were younger, some photographs of John Jones with some of his friends gathering inside of the club. And once she started running the place, Ruby, B met Sue there, and of course that fling hit. So that's Sweet 16. She was a pretty little 16-year-old. B fell in love with her right there. And they ended up getting married. Ruby ran the place for a number of years, but the next person to me that ran the place that really had an impact on it was a young lady named Mary Shepard, who in 2008 was named the Queen of the Juke by the governor of the state of Mississippi. And Mary is in the house. I'm so happy to see her here. She was named the Queen of the Juke by the governor of the state of Mississippi in 2008. Mary is one of those ladies who ran this club for a number of years. Actually, it was 34 years. And when you're talking about chittlin circuit, Mary Shepard's chittlin circuit, all right? Mary had Tyrone Davis, just anybody you could name. The club housed and played acts like James Brown, Count Basie Band, Ike and Tina Turner, Albert King. As a matter of fact, Albert King can be credited to the remodeling, and we'll get to that once we get a little bit further into it. Seal Johnson, which is one of the guys who was on the program today, and a number of guys. As a matter of fact, all of you guys who are musicians, the majority of you have also played in Club Ebony. We had a student here at Mississippi Valley, his name was Levin, who played at Club Ebony. So you're talking about people internationally who came into the club. BB, of course, played there. Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, Bobby Blue Bland, Ike and Tina Turner again, I say. We have people from France who really want to come to the Delta and play in Club Ebony and show you the rich history that this place has. You have people from international people who want to come into the Delta to get a chance to play in Club Ebony. You know how much they charge? $0. They want to be in Club Ebony. People from France, from Italy. Again, I said Levin was from Georgia. He's from the country of Georgia. He came here, he went to school at Mississippi Valley. He learned a lot, and he continued to play. As a matter of fact, he went back to Georgia about 5 years ago, a little bit more than that, and he's actually still playing. So let's show you the reach of the blues and Club Ebony. Now in 2003, I believe, the state of the Mississippi, the governor declared it the state of the blues. And at that point, he set up a blues commission. The blues commission was charged with finding locations where people played, finding locations where they were born, and finding locations where they were buried. One of those locations happened to be Club Ebony. To show you how important the chittlin circuit was to the state, the second blues marker that was installed out of the 194 that's installed now was installed at a club. In Greenville, Mississippi, another part of the chittlin circuit was a club called Southern Whispers. That's the second blues marker installed by the state of Mississippi. So that shows you how important the chittlin circuit is to the whole blues era, okay? In 2009, Club Ebony became the 84th marker. So that's really good for Club Ebony. Let's give it up for Club Ebony, y'all. It became the 84th marker for the state of Mississippi. Like I say, BB King Museum, to me, wouldn't even be a thought without Mary Shepard, because Mary Shepard actually reattached BB back into the Delta, had him to come back and start playing in the club. He played in the club for 34 years straight that I know of. She brought him back, I think, the first time in 1976. She said she called BB one day and said, BB, you haven't been home. You got to come back. He said, okay. And he came back, and he came back every year. And Club Ebony was one of the places that he played in every year for a lot of years. In 2008, Mary Shepard decided to retire after running the place for so long. And guess who bought it? BB. BB King actually purchased the museum. He operated the museum for 4 years with a local management company. After that, he decided to give it over to the BB King Museum. So now we have the place. We actually went back, talked to Mary. I did a lot of conversations. I talked to Mary. I talked to some of the kids of John Jones. John Jones Jr. came in, and he told me what the club looked like in the beginning. So we started looking around, trying to figure it out. We had drop ceilings. We had paneling on the wall. Let's change all this stuff up. Let's take a look and see what it is. We needed to do some electrical work. So we started taking things down. Lo and behold, there was all the original. The original ceiling, the original wall, those glass blocks, the recessed pieces that John Jones envisioned when he built the place in 1946 or 7 and opened in 48, they were all still there. And I really have to credit Ms. Mary Shepard for that, because I talked to her. I said, Mary, was the club that way when you got it? She said, no. She said, one day I was doing a show, and I had Albert King doing a show. She said, Albert King was up there wailing it. You know, guys know Albert King. You know, he really get down. So Albert King was up there wailing it. And he stopped in the middle of his show and said, hey, where's Miss Shepard? Miss Shepard walked up there. She feeling good, like, okay, Albert, you know, he's going to give me my accolades. Albert said, Miss Shepard, if you don't do something about this old-timey looking place, I ain't never coming here to play no more. Mary Shepard went after she shrinked and stood back up. She went to the bank the next day, and she was able to talk to him about a remodel, and they remodeled the club. So that's where the Today Club come from. Mary remodeled it on the outside, on the inside, put in the drop ceiling. Then when we got it, we turned around and took the drop ceiling back out and put in air conditioning, made it a little bit more comfortable, made it a little bit safer with all new electrical, and now you have Club Ebony. That's the history of Club Ebony, guys. We'll be in Club Ebony again tonight, so come out and have yourself a good time. Thank you. Now, I know it was hard to talk about a place like Club Ebony that existed for all those years in 10 minutes, but.
Good morning. I would like to first say thank God for waking me up and being here and seeing some of all of my friends that played for me a long time ago. But I came to Club Ebony January the 4th, 1974. And my ex-husband asked me, did I want to take it because it was vacant? And I said, well, you have gotten hurt. I have my mother, aunt that raised me, and 2 little children. Let me think about it and come back and give you an answer in 2 weeks. So I did. And my mother said, you can, aunt that raised me, she said, you can do it. I said, well, I have all of you all to see about it. So she said, don't worry about it. Go ahead and take the club. So I had taken it in 1974. So as Mr. Roberts said, Albert King, the one that, well, Little Milton was the first one played. Then was Albert King, and then was Bobby Bland, then my friend BB. And because he was booked, and I couldn't get him first. So BB and I were together 34, Robert said 35, 34 years. And I continued on up until he deceased with him. I never missed but one, his homecomings. I missed one of Robert's. But due to all, when Robert called me and asked me to be here this year. So I would like to thank Mr. Walter Pitts and Jamie from the director of the Highland Wolf Museum in West Point, Mississippi. So that's where I live now. But I never forget about home. And I would like to thank all of you all the band artists from all over the world that came and supported Mary Shepherd. And I always would remember Indianola, Mississippi. That is my home, and I love everybody there. So I am proud to be here today, and I want to thank you, and thank you again for supporting me.
We have something right here. We like to, in behalf of All-Star Trophies and the 3rd annual BB King Day, we present this to Miss Mary Shepherd for continuing the legacy of the blues. That's right. Thank you.
Thank you. And make tears want to come out of my eyes. Thank you.
That's good. How you doing, Dr. Hudson? There's another historian in the building. We also have on the back of your program, if you look, make sure you observe the kind of people who are supporting our efforts to continue to build this annual symposium. Hate to call it a symposium because when you get all the musicians together, it's really just a family reunion of a sort. But because of academics, we're going to call it a symposium. Have a list here. The BB King Museum and Delta Interpretive Center, they are a major part of what we're doing, and they are our primary partner in making this happen. Also, the Greenwood Convention and Visitors Bureau, as you'll see noted, they've been very helpful to give us, monies toward advertisement and other things. We wouldn't have these booklets or programs for you without them. Mr. Edgar Smith, who I see just walking in the building, one of the great contributors to what we do, and he's actually the chairman of the Benevolence Fund, which does extraordinary stuff for many of the older bluesmen in the state of Mississippi, those people who kind of made their life off of the music but never got any substantial monetary return on it. And so Dr. Smith started a benevolence fund to make sure that they had at least some type of health, support, some kind of plan, whenever there was a need to arise. And so I really, we should give him a wonderful, because without that, we have many blues musicians who wouldn't have some of the things that they need. So it's a wonderful experience. And we have many more, and I'll try to mention some of those as we move through the program. I mentioned a gentleman earlier by the name of Honey Boy Edwards. He's going to be talked about, but I want to bring 2 gentlemen to the stage at this point. And I call him Deacon Blues, like he wants to be called Deacon Blues, but he's a professor in his own right, and you'll read about him in the program. But also we have author extraordinaire Preston Lauterbach. So if you 2 gentlemen will come up to the platform, and we're going to have a wonderful discussion and interview here So I want you to pay close attention to what's being said. The chittlin circuit is just one of those unusual things that will get by you, because as history goes, I don't know where y'all want to come over this end? Come on over. History has a way of burying itself inside of a book, and many times it never gets exposed. So what we're going to do is try to expose some of that history that's inside of a book. And without further ado, we have Deacon Blues and Preston Lauterbach.
Thank you so very much. It's so good to be here today at Alcorn. And you was paying attention.
Matter of fact, take the microphone away from me.
So now that I've gotten your attention, I'm so glad to be back. I've been coming to Mississippi Valley since 2006. I'm proud to say I was an artist, scholar, in residence here in your Blues Studies program. I live and breathe the blues. Let me see the hands of the students that are here. All right, I'm talking to you. You have an invaluable resource here in Dr. Sanders and your administration, and I urge you, if you don't have one already, they need to teach a course here called The History of the Blues. We're here this morning to talk about the chittlin circuit. There's a book that was written about the chittlin circuit and the road to rock and roll, and the author will be up in a minute. His name is Preston Lauterbach. But very briefly, we need to kind of define, since we are in an academic institution, what a chittlin circuit is in terms of an institution and what purpose did it serve. The chittlin circuit was a circuit supported by the black business community that provided entertainment. It wasn't a new phenomenon. Actually, the chittlin circuit goes all the way back to the world of the juke, J-U-K-E, J-O-O-K, which means to jump up, to make noise. And since the period of slavery, there have always been these secretive, all-black spaces where black folks went to party, have a good time, exchange services and goods. And out of that, we got a series in the 20th century of clubs that began to form the chittlin circuit. The one thing I found unique about your book, and one thing that most authors miss, is the people that were behind the chittlin circuit. The people that supported the chittlin circuit were actually black business people. They were people that had legitimate and also alternative underground enterprises. Most black neighborhoods had a barber. Most neighborhoods had some kind of gambler. In the sound of my voice, including myself, a lot of us are the beneficiaries of the numbers racket. A lot of people in my hometown and my family went to college, got operations, people got buried, folks got out of jail, people bought cars, tuition was paid by the numbers racket. And what I found so interesting about your book is when you talked about the people in the underground economy in those various cities that supported it, even including Sunbeam Mitchell, I thought about what had happened in Negro League Baseball. Same people. As a matter of fact, in Negro League Baseball, all the owners of the Negro League Baseball teams were your number one numbers bankers in those towns. There was one woman. Her name was Effa Manley. She was related to the former president of Spelman College and the prime minister of Jamaica. She ran the Newark Eagles team. My point was there was a tremendous amount of money in the chittlin circuit, both for music and for baseball. And people always think that they integrated baseball because they wanted to bring in Jackie Robinson. No, they didn't. What they discovered was that when the Yankees were out of town, the black Yankees were filling up Yankee Stadium. Thousands of people. It was a lot of money to be made. So they didn't necessarily want to integrate out of the goodness of their heart. They saw the ticket gate receipts. You had black baseball teams who were filling up major league stadiums when the other teams were out of town. Now, when we moved to the chittlin circuit, it was the same way. These people were so organized that they were able to bring entertainers all throughout the South. And I saw a lot of names in your book that I recognized. For example, in Atlanta, there was a man by the name of BB Beeman. Well, BB Beeman was not only a promoter, he was an undertaker, and he had his hands in other kinds of rackets that were going on. But he did good. And what I'm saying, young people, is as a people, we have always been forced to find a way to make one. And so when we talk about the chittlin circuit, when we talk about the blues, you must remember we were always held out. And whenever we were able and smart enough to handle our own business, sometimes we ran into problems. I argue that that's why it's been so difficult to build and keep strong black record companies, because it's too much money to be made. I'm not going to say very much else. I'll ask our Arthur Preston Lauderback to probably respond to my comments and your questions, and what was his motivation behind writing the book, The Chitlin Circuit?
Thank you. I'm going to take the podium. I said I would prefer for him to do the whole speech. But, you know, and that was beautiful, and that's exactly the purpose. That's what inspired me about the story, was the business that was behind it. That was a complete revelation to me, which was the entrepreneurial energy, the bitter with the sweet that was the business behind the Chitlin Circuit. Deacon Blues spoke of the numbers game, and what the numbers game was a method of centralizing financial resources in what were often impoverished African American communities. Now, the way that ran was simply the same way that the lottery runs, except it happened at the street level. You had numbers runners who were circulating throughout the neighborhoods, who were taking people's bets on what number would hit. Exact same as the pick 3 or the pick 6. It's illegal when black people do it. When white people do it, it's the state lottery. So that kind of disparity, though, however, is taking place throughout the circuit. Now, one of the questions that I'm often asked, because I'm youngish, not as young as I used to be, as anyone is, but also white, how did I get into it? Because it certainly wasn't really part of my upbringing and my culture in Southern California, where I grew up. But the circuit, of course, is a circuit. There is interconnectedness between the people, the places, and the history. And I've always loved history. And when I came south to Mississippi in the early part of this century and started visiting places like Club Ebony and became inspired to learn more about the background of people like Mary Shepard, of people like Sun B. Mitchell, who was mentioned earlier, it just seemed like this vast, fascinating, unexplored place that, oh, by the way, contributed everything to American pop music. It all started in these nightclubs. But the person who turned me on to it, I don't see him here yet. You'd know if he was here. It was a man named Bobby Rush, who was an absolute, oh, we got, okay, all right, yeah. So the most dynamic, electrifying, fascinating entertainer that I had ever seen. He did this show, and he's wearing like the jumpsuit with the sequins all over it, and he's got the curl, the process, and I'm like, this is like James Brown and Elvis had a baby. And he had these dancers with him. There's one right now. There they are. I'm talking about you. So I see this dynamic entertainer and these beautiful women on stage, and I'm wondering about this, and he introduces the women. And I can't remember if I'm going to get the exact designations right, but he had the little butt, the middle butt, and the big butt. Did I get that right? Maybe he had 4 on stage that day. I don't know. So then I said, I got to see what's behind all this. But it was Bobby Rush who really inspired me. He called himself the king of the Chitlin Circuit. I'm like, what is that? And he was so interesting, so compelling, so electrifying. I had to know the background, and I got into the history of it. And I met this old man by the name of Sax Carey. Now, he's not significant because he's a famous name. He's significant and interesting because he did everything. He, let's see, he was a guitar player at the Lions Den in Oklahoma City after Charlie Christian died. He fronted a big band called the Carolina Cotton Pickers in the 40s. He managed Big Maceo, blues piano player, for a while. He was the straight man to the comic Mantan Moreland. So anything that I wanted to know about the background of this operation, he would tell me. And he was honest. He never inflated his own stature or his own role. If anything, he was too humble about how important he was. But he was the one who laid on me this whole concept of the numbers and how it was circulated through who was the first, according to Sachs and my research later on, the first black-owned national entertainment agency, which came out of Indianapolis, Indiana in the late 30s. but it was the numbers banker. And I say banker because I think that there is a certain amount of legitimacy that has to be recognized in the activities of these financiers. A black businessman isn't going to go to a bank in 1938 with a good idea and get $100,000, to make his dream come true. Not happening. It had to be, the resources had to be done more creatively. And that's what this man Ferguson did. So he started a nightclub, a talent agency. So he was the one who really started, and he started a scholarship to send high school students through college. So he was not only, making money on one side of the street, but he was building up the community on the other side of it. That's the way it had to be. But the way that he built his operation was to find promoters, because every town, from Indianola to Memphis to Chicago and all places in between had the Black Main Street, whether it was Beale Street or Rampart Street, Church Street, and most of these institutions had a more or less kingpin type figure. And what Ferguson did was he put them all together. He united them. And so when I see people call the chittlin circuit a loosely organized network, there wasn't anything loose about it. I mean, it was a well-oiled machine. It was like a corporation, the way that it was run. And talent circulated. You could see the biggest names in the world in small towns. Who's played at Club A? Ray Charles, James Brown, Little Richard, you name an African-American member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they have played all of these clubs. And so that was just how elegant of a system it really was. Does anybody have any questions out there? I realize I'm going fast and going on, but I don't want to run past anything anybody is interested in from what I've touched on thus far. Sir?
Yeah, well, and I want to know, your title is a reference to the lead-in to rock and roll. So when and how was this transition taking place in your estimate?
That's a great question.
So he asked, the focus that I ended up coming up with the history of this in this particular book is the road to rock and roll. Everybody knows rock and roll is black music, right? That's no secret. Unfortunately, it's not widely accepted as being the fact. The mainstream, like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, for instance, says that rock and roll is the union of like white, country and western, and black rhythm and blues. All of the evolution in music that we come to recognize as rock and roll happened on the circuit, okay? However many, almost 10 years before Elvis Presley made his first record of That's All Right Mama, an African-American artist did the same thing. It's the exact same song. 7 years before Good Rockin' Tonight, Elvis recorded Good Rockin' Tonight, a man named Roy Brown recorded it, and he made that phrase, rockin', okay? Y'all know what that means, don't you? Back then, they couldn't just come right out and say everything, so rockin' is a little term for making love. Now they can just say it, but back then, it was code. And so that whole concept, that idea of singing about sexual relationships is really what gave birth to rock and roll. And it happened first on the circuit. Now, that's kind of the slangy cultural side of it. On the business side of it, the circuit started off with big bands, orchestras, built on like the Duke Ellington, Count Basie 20-piece with horn sections and soloists and arrangements, more in a jazz type of a bag. Swing music, they called it back then. But around World War II, a lot of the musicians got shipped off into the Army. There was rations placed on gasoline, on bus travel, and so all these economic factors blended with a very popular artist by the name of Louis Jordan, who came along during World War II and did with a 5-piece band what Count Basie and Duke Ellington took 20 pieces to do, and that is to fill the house and get it rocking. So once Louis Jordan came along, he changed the shape of music. He changed the sound of music from big band to small band. And that was kind of like the big bang of rock and roll. You wouldn't say that he invented rock and roll, but he changed the shape of popular music from big band, 20-piece type orchestra to quartets, 5-piece bands, which is more associated with the rock and roll, shape of a band. And the sound evolved from there. So it was like the popularity of Louis Jordan, the rockin' type atmosphere that Roy Brown sang about in Good Rockin' Tonight. all of these trends became popular. They became hot and started blowing up together at the same time. And so rock and roll was, basically a fully formed African-American music style by 1948, almost 10 years before Elvis got big. So now, to be fair to Elvis, I don't think he ever claimed to have invented anything. But when white people are in control of the story and in charge of history, that's sometimes what happens. Sir?
What did Ike Turner think? Ike Turner feel?
Yeah, so Ike Turner was interesting in that he came out of Clarksdale, Mississippi, and he, has his roots in that down-home blues atmosphere in the Delta. But there was this band that came through town called the International Sweethearts of Rhythm. Anybody ever heard of them before? They're kind of forgotten. I see some, but they're a Mississippi, what they called back then an all-girl band from the Piney River School. Piney Woods, thank you. The Piney Woods School, yeah, exactly. So they came through Clarksdale, and he said, man, them chicks can blow. And so that was one of the things that inspired him, to become a part of this world. And so he started what he called a little raggedy band and took it from there. But he was, of course, one of the important figures who, along with Jackie Brenston and some of his other friends there in the Delta, who adopted this more small band strategy towards music and came out with an electrified guitar sound, and that hard drum sound. And so he was a big, important part of that evolution from big band to rock and roll. But it was a Chitlin Circuit big band that really, sparked his interest and his inspiration. Sir?
I found it interesting in your book, the discussion of the origins of Caledonia and Little Richard and that whole different area that seems to be more relevant today.
Yeah, so he asked about the song, well, he really asked me about Little Richard. Do you mean like the transgender aspect of Little Richard? So everybody knows Little Richard. Not everybody knows that he started off as what they called back then a female impersonator. So Ms. Shepard probably remembers back in the old days, that was just a typical part of a show. You could have a comedian, a band, but female impersonators were very popular. And that is how Little Richard got started. And he didn't know how to stand up on high heels. And so he'd be in a big ball gown, and his band had to set him up on the high heels, and then the curtain would open. But everybody knows, and he starts singing. And one of the things that he would start singing was what you would recognize as Tutti Frutti. But they wouldn't let him record it with the original words, which were a wop baba loomop, a good goddamn, Tutti Frutti, good booty. If it don't fit, don't force it. You can grease it up, make it easy. They had to clean that up a little bit. I saw your hand up, sir.
I'd like to know, I was playing for quartets in the early 60s.
Say that
They
again.
also mentioned the Chitlin Circuit.
Say that again.
Quartets in the early 60s.
Right, yeah,
I
like
saw a lot of those singers out there.
the Clovers, Five Royales, and all those kinds
Yeah,
of
all of
groups.
them.
Yeah.
But in the gospel, they called it the Chitlin Circuit too.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Pretty rough.
That's a good point. So, the gentleman just mentioned that there was also by way of the traveling quartets, there was also a gospel Chitlin Circuit. And you look at and it's almost the exact same kind of an establishment, only instead of juke joints, it's churches. And some of those quartets could be just as rough on the church side as on the juke joint side. I've heard some stories. I think they had as many pistols and Cadillacs going to the churches than they did the juke joint. Just historically as a fact from what I've heard. But there was one of the guys, who promoted a lot of those acts was Don Roby. Yes, sir. And so Don Roby is one of the great unknown hustlers of all time. He made money in the juke joints. He made money in the churches. He made money all over the place. But he is, I think also at the same time, those stories are funny and entertaining, and I love them as much as anybody. But it kind of overshadows what a brilliant businessman it was, and that he had to be like that. He had to be tough in order to make money because it wasn't there for African-American entrepreneurs, He was the first, and I think probably the longest running, most successful African-American record company owner. So he was, before Motown, before Stax, before High Records, he was competing with all of the big boys, Atlantic Records, who were really dominating the rhythm and blues field at that time. And I think I saw Mrs. Bobby Blue Bland out in the audience today. And of course, there she is. You can't really say Don Roby was successful without mentioning Bobby Blue Bland, can you? But of course, Mr. Roby had many enterprises, many artists. He represented Ike Turner out on the road, Johnny Ace. Somebody mentioned Hound Dog earlier when we were talking about the songs Elvis recorded off of black artists. Well, that was originally a Don Roby record, but it was Bobby Blue Bland who carried Duke Records for many, many years with, I could sit up here all day and name the song titles. They're all great. An absolutely brilliant, a genius of American music who I think is every bit as responsible for Mr. Roby's success as Mr. Roby was himself. Anybody else? I know we have other things that we need to move along to. Sir?
Don Roby did Big Mama did Hound Dog?
Well, it was put out on his record company, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it came out in 1952 on, I think it was on the Peacock Records. He had Duke Records and Peacock.
Right, but Big Mama Thornton came down
right.
where we were playing in
South
Bay and did that song 3 or 4 times and walked around with that hat.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and you better put something in here because Elvis Presley made $1 million.
Oh, my gosh.
Put $10 in that hat.
Yeah, that's a good, true story right there. Absolutely. Well, I've got a couple of books over here. If anybody wants one, I'd be happy to sign them. I think I see another question up. What you got? What do you give me?
You know, I would just like to know.
It's the chittlin circuit, right? Sir.
Did anybody know that what Duke Ellington's real name was when he left St. Francisville, Louisiana? From what they tell me, he's part of my family.
Okay.
Okay. My great-grandmother was a Chapache Indian sold as a slave to Star Hill Plantation. And my grandmother used to get these letters. She couldn't read or write. But they had this lady that worked at the servants. She was a servant at the plantation. She would get the letters and she would read them. My grandmother would burn them up. So Duke Ellington sent my grandmother an accordion. And so they burned it up too because they never found out where he was because he had took the name Duke Ellington. And I would love to know what his real name was.
I've never heard that story before. Yeah, that's definitely a good research project right there. Thank you. I think so, yeah. Mr. Robinson. Okay, yeah, I think we can make a deal. Any other questions right now? Okay, you got it. It's not an auction yet. Well, y'all, thank you very much. Oh, sir, Professor.
You mentioned the connection between the church and the blues. How did Ray Charles get the name, the right Reverend Ray Charles?
Do you need me to tell you that? Well, of course, you know, Ray Charles, probably more noticeably than anybody else, at a much higher level, fused the sounds of gospel and the sounds of rhythm and blues or pop music, whatever you want to call it, and got into, I don't know, a certain bit of controversy for it. There were people who felt like he shouldn't be bringing that sacred sound into a secular atmosphere, but if he became known as the Right Reverend Ray Charles, then it didn't bother everybody, and of course he made beautiful music either way. Is that right? Okay. So he had holy roots. Okay. Ma'am. Edward Kennedy Ellington is what we have so far on that. All right. Well, thank y'all so very much. I really appreciate this. I'll be around if you have any more questions. Everybody, Deacon Blues.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time. Deacon Blues, Preston Lauterbach. I want to take a moment to thank my dear friend, Brad Boer. He's busy doing all kinds of stuff. He don't want to be recognized for anything, but I have to. Brad, why don't you just raise your hand down here front? Brad is an entrepreneur out of Dallas, Texas, who I met, some time ago, and we bonded and we shared conversations. And of course, Brad had the idea, why don't we look at this history a little bit deeper? And of course, that led us to the chittlin circuit concept or the thought. And this next group of people that I'm going to bring up is no better than to try to, I guess, to exemplify the roots of the chittlin circuit in terms of performance. And there was a gentleman who found a black blues man in Chicago when he was lying dormant. He actually had stopped doing most of what he was supposed to be doing. And so this young white gentleman said, we should be playing together. We should be doing some things together. And of course, that bond lasted for over, 40 years or so. And of course, we lost Honey Boy 2011. So I'm going to bring these guys to the stage, and you can read about their bios inside because they have beautiful histories. And I would encourage people, don't forget about keeping this book. This is just not something to print and throw in the trash can. This is history, a lot of history in it. So I would encourage you to keep it. I also want to make another quick effort to say, please, please, please fill out those surveys. Without your input, I cannot continue to do this kind of work. So we need the surveys. We need them, we need them, we need them, all right? So please fill out surveys, and hopefully they're not letting anybody out without doing them. Also, I want to say that much of what we're doing on the university campus is pushed along by, I'm going to call her my dear friend. She's going to always say, you don't know what you're talking about. But Kathy, Dr. Kathy Golden over here, one of the great ones, she keeps a lot of things moving when I can't get anything done. So I want to say, Kathy, thank you so much for making things happen for us. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have, where's Ben Payton go? Michael Frank, come on up. And, he's going to put Honey Boy on the, while he getting ready while you coming, make sure you sit in front of your sign. I don't want to get you mixed up with Ben. Did Ben leave? Okay. Well, anyway, one of my favorite readings about Honey Boy is the story where Honey Boy is trying to learn to be a hobo, and I want Michael to tell us start. Well, I'm gonna start off with that because you say it's okay once you get to the place you're gonna perform, but that whole transition of getting from A to B, when you talk about you got to ride a train to get from here to there, and Honey Boy became one of those guys who understood what riding a train was like. But I thought it was such a funny story, and it was a dangerous story. But why don't you talk about that? Yeah, just talking to the mic here. Pull your chair up.
All right.
They got you.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Dr. Sanders. I was asked to talk about Honey Boy because he was born in June 28, 1915 in Shaw, Mississippi. And his parents were sharecroppers, moved around different plantations around the Delta, depending on how well they were treated by the plantation owner, what kind of deal they did, how the crop made out from one year to the next, different reasons they moved around. Honey Boy's father was a guitar player. And So starting around age 8, he started to fool around with his father's guitar. And it affected him really deeply. His father would just get tired of hearing him try to learn how to play on his own and tell him, boy, get out of that key. Get out of that key. Change your key up. He didn't tell him how to do it yet, but he said, get out of that key, because he was tired of hearing the bracket. And so Honey Boy Edwards started playing before what became known as the chittlin circuit. He actually started playing his first gig when he was 14, when some people had a house party on a plantation, and they had broken their wind-up graphophone, as he called it, record player. They broke the spring, so they needed some entertainment. So they came and asked his father, could Honey play our house party? I don't think they called it a house party back then, and he played all night. He was 13 years old, played all night. He said they kept feeding him whiskey to keep him going. And that was his first professional gig at 13, playing for a house party out on a plantation out in around Greenwood, Mississippi. And Big Joe Williams, who is best known for recording Baby Please Don't Go, Big Joe Williams played a 9-string guitar that he jerry-rigged. And Big Joe came through. Anybody from Greenwood know where Fort Loring is? Fort Loring, yeah. Honey Boy's family was living out there on a plantation, Fort Loring, right near where the railroad bridge is out there, on the Pillow Plantation. And Big Joe Williams came through in December of 1932, and of course that was in between seasons. So there was no work on the plantation really at that time. And Honey Boy went and snuck up on the juke joint and stood outside and listened to Big Joe play. And Big Joe, saw him there studying him so hard and said, boy, can you play? Can you play? Honey Boy said, I can play a little bit. Big Joe tossed him his guitar and said, show me what you can do. And from that moment, they had a bond. And Big Joe said, I think I can learn you something. So Honey Boy took Big Joe back to his house, and his father had never, his family didn't know anything about Big Joe except that he was a blues player, but his father, Honey Boy's father, who was very well educated, appreciated music. So when Big Joe asked Honey Boy's father if he could take him out on the road at 17, his father, who Honey Boy was convinced had just remarried and was thinking about his new wife more than worrying about Honey Boy, said, yeah, you can go if you want to. Honey Boy went down to play out in the streets of Greenwood. Big Joe showed him how to hustle music on the street, Big Joe was a heavy drinker too. And they got down to New Orleans, played around in the French Quarter all over in the little joints down there, in the street, making money. Big Joe started to short Honey Boy on the money. Honey Boy was 17, Big Joe was probably twice his age. Honey Boy got tired of Big Joe arguing and getting drunk and arguing, shorting him on the money, and left and hitchhiked, hoboed back to the Delta. And he got up on the bridge by Pass Christian, and somebody said, can you play that thing? He had the guitar on his back. Yeah, I can play a little bit. He started playing for nickels and dimes like Big Joe showed him, and he started to realize, I don't need Big Joe anymore. And from that moment on until 96, when he played his last gig in Clarksdale, Mississippi, at the Mississippi Juke Joint Festival, he played that guitar, didn't work on a plantation anymore, And that guitar took him all over the world. But he was a transitional figure. People want to know, well, who is this Honey Boy Edwards? That's the theme. He was a complicated guy. kind of a philosopher in a way. The title of this book, if you can see it, is called "The World Don't Owe Me Nothing." Well, how would you like to feel that way about your life looking back, that you had done everything, you were satisfied, no matter how hard a time you had, whatever you did, that at the end of your life, the world didn't owe you nothing. That was his way of thinking about his life. And to me, that was pretty powerful stuff. And as he got older, he started to get to know, people want to know about Robert Johnson. You know, everybody wanted to know about Robert Johnson. So much that Honey Boy got tired of being asked about Robert Johnson. But it turns out that Honey Boy was a good friend of Robert Johnson, who became known as the king of Delta blues players, from 1936 to 1938 when Robert Johnson died. And they were actually only 4 years apart in age, because Robert Johnson died at age 26. So if you want to know what Robert Johnson's life was like, well, Honey Boy did everything Robert did and then some, and lived to talk about it, and lived 96. You know, Robert Lockwood Jr. used to like to kid Honey Boy, say, "I don't see how you lived as long as you did," considering what Honey Boy did. You know, he was a blues hobo. He learned how to get around in the days when there were short lines. Anybody remember short line railroads? You wanted to know about Honey Boy hopping freights. Well, back in the days when there were all these little towns, after Honey Boy decided not to pick cotton anymore, he would go from town to town, state to state, and I counted it up when we were working on this, about 13 different states. And he would go into town and you know, play on the streets. He'd have to figure out how to stay out of jail because of the vagrancy laws. Sometimes he'd play in a little juke joints.
Can you
and he had to get around, you know.
Yeah, but can you talk about vagrancy so that some of the younger people in the room will understand?
I will, yeah. And vagrancy laws were laws, and still are to this day, still used in a similar way in some instances, especially in a big city like Chicago. Back in Honey Boy's time, there were laws to essentially get labor for the plantations during the times of, you know, harvesting and picking, and also when the weeds needed to be chopping cotton. And so Honey Boy and musicians especially had to learn in which towns they were strictly enforced, and you know, in those places they had to stay indoors because, you know, they're supposed to be out working, and musicians were not of his type, were not thought well of because, you know, they were a bad example for the people picking cotton and for the free lifestyle that they lived. So he had to learn to stay. He stayed indoors during the weekdays, during the time when people were out working in the fields, so that he wouldn't be arrested. And he would come out at night when people were back, you know, in town, or on the weekend, when he could just mingle with everybody else and nobody would know that he hadn't been out picking cotton. And he also learned how to get friendly in some of the small towns with the, you know, the chief police, or so that somebody like that, so that you know, if they wanted their lawn cut or their car wash or something, he would do that, you know, when he wasn't gigging at night, so that they would kind of be his protection in a way. But because he got around on the trains from town to town, he sometimes hitchhiked. If he had money, he'd do what he said, ride the cushions. If he'd made enough money gambling or playing guitar for nickels and dimes on the street, he could buy a railroad ticket, which he called riding the cushions. If he didn't, he would hop a freight, and he'd have to learn the schedule what time the railroads had detectives wandering around the yards to prevent hobos and vandalism. And so he'd have to figure out to get on the train on the blind side, which was, the side where the detectives weren't, and the freight wasn't being loaded from. And sometimes he'd ride on top of the train, and hold on. If you've seen some pictures of the Depression, you've seen, on public television, you've seen people of all backgrounds riding the freight trains on top or in the freight cars. Well, Honey Boy sometimes ride on top, sometimes he'd ride in the refrigerator car, he called the reefer. And he'd have to spike the door so that the detectives couldn't get in. He'd pick up a railroad spike off the tracks and leave the door open about this far so they'd get air, but the detectives couldn't get in. And sometimes he'd ride underneath, that's called riding the rods, underneath the train, holding on, and sometimes in between the trains. Yeah, it was very, very dangerous. But the vagrancy laws, you want to know about the vagrancy laws, the railroad lines didn't want hobos, riding their trains. So they'd have these detectives. And one time, Honey Boy was getting off a train just down near Tutwiler, a little town that Sonny Boy Williamson was from. I can't think of the name right now. And he was picked up for vagrancy coming off this train. He was, I think, 17, 18. This is one of the early times when he did. And he was taken to a local justice of the peace in this little town, who was in this little grocery store, holding court, and he was put on a county farm. And back in those days, this was around 34, something like that. Actually, probably about 33. And he was put on a county farm, which was privatized back then. They were subcontractors from the state. The Parchman was a state prison, but the county farms down here were run by private people that had a contract. So he was put on a county farm for 2 months. But he was so young that the guy who was the overseer took a liking to him, called him Little Greenwood, and Honey Boy had gotten really sick while he was out there, and this guy fed him, the white overseer, gave him better food than the other prisoners, and got him well by giving him fresh vegetables and better food than the crappy food the other people got. And he got out, and then he offered him to let him continue to live there for $1 a day and be free, but live on this county farm. But Honey Boy said, no, thank you. But he was worried that he tried to get word to his father in Greenwood to come and get him. But he got out just in time, and he told me he was thankful that his father hadn't come and got him, because he would have had to pay the fine, and he knew his father was struggling as a sharecropper, and so he didn't want him to do that. So he got out just in time. But that was one example of how the vagrancy laws were enforced, and that was in the summertime. And those people were kept in wire open like cages at night, with guards with shotguns, and they were chained in this county farms. Another time in 1946, he was sitting with a friend of his down on Beale Street in a bar, just sitting there having a drink, minding their own business. And these two white policemen arrested him and his friend for vagrancy. The one guy, Honey Boy, went in, and those were the days when the bathrooms were separated, white and black. So Honey Boy was in the men's bathroom on one side, and on the other wall was this one of the two policemen. And Honey Boy could hear the guy taking a half pint and drinking it all, and getting. So the guy comes out of the bathroom and decides to arrest Honey Boy and his friend for vagrancy. And actually to bust the friend, Jesse. So he takes Jesse out to the car, and the other policeman says, "Is there any more birds in there?" Referring to black people they could bust for vagrancies. So the cop that brought Jesse out said, "Yeah, there's one more. Well, go get him too." Bring Honey Boy out. And they put him in the Shelby County work farm for 2 months. But he got good behavior, so he got off a few days early for good behavior. And you know, he had given his girlfriend at the time his amp to hold while he was in there, and she pawned it and hooked up with another guy while he was in there.
Now that's the blues. Yeah.
So he came out, and he told her, "Oh, babe, man, I need that guitar." So she went and borrowed it from her new boyfriend, borrowed the money and got it out. Bless her soul. And he got his equipment back and left town. Didn't look back, but that was another example of vagrancy law. Another time, there was no law mentioned, but he and Blind Teddy Darby, another street musician from Memphis, this is in the early 30s, were up, in Missouri, trying to go from town to town and play gigs, looking for gigs, make money. And this guy who owned a plantation had a pickup truck and saw them walking down the road and came by, and without a gun or anything, just the social power that they had. So get in the car, get in, And he took him to his plantation, his farm, and told him to go to work. He had no weapon on him or anything, but the Honey Boy had bucked that. He'd probably been dead. The guy soon realized that Teddy Darby was blind, and so he let him go. But Honey Boy stayed there and waited until this guy, the roads back then, they crisscrossed the fields. There wasn't a straight line to a highway or anything. So Honey Boy waited till this guy was a couple miles away, but he could still see him, and he lit out. He had set his guitar down. He got his guitar and figured out a way to go in the opposite direction to get the hell out of there. And he made it. Both of them individually made it back to Memphis, and they hooked up back in Memphis. But that was another example of how vagrancy was enforced.
Well, thanks, Mike. I know that you have a book, so we've got. I guess I don't.
Time.
No, we're fine. We're in good shape. But I do want to make sure that people get a chance to talk to Michael about the book. We have one special thing that reason I put Ben Payton here together with him, because Ben knows and understands the music of Honey Boy in many ways. So Ben is going to do a little presentation, and then we're going to be on to the next thing. So did y'all talk about what you're going to do? No. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ben Payton. Let's give a round of applause to Michael Frank. And like I said, he has a beautiful book written in honor of Honey Boy.
Of it.
Okay, say that again.
It's Honey Boy's oral history. I was just the vessel by which he told it to me and to my co-author. Over an 8-year period, he told us stories about his life, and it's his own voice. It's him talking. It's not me writing about him talking.
Okay.
Yeah. If Honey Boy were here watching him, he'd be looking for a lick that he could steal, because Honey Boy had this saying. He was. For those of you who want to be musicians, he was totally confident, self-confident. Mm-hmm. He appreciated good finger pickers, but he didn't really look up to anybody as like some musicians do now. Oh, he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Honey Boy had total confidence in what he could do. But he would be watching somebody else, because he would say, I never get everything that's on that neck. He could never get all the music was up there. He would keep trying. He would steal something that he heard you play if he liked it. But his entire life until he died, he was still looking for that sound on that neck.
All right.
Go ahead, man.
We're going to do something in E, the key of E. Okay. Oh, you ain't going with me.
Was I supposed to play with you?
All right. All right. While he's doing that, I noticed one thing about Honey Boy Elwood is that he was pretty much. You didn't bring no.
Oh shit.
You know,
Okay, I'm gonna just.
Well, I'm by myself then.
By yourself.
Okay, you have to sing it out then.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, Honey Boy had one little lick that as I was putting this song together. This song is called Ramblin'. Now, Robert Johnson had a rambling also, but Honey Boy's rambling was different from Robert Johnson's rambling. And so Honey Boy had a little lick, like you hear Robert doing, like that. Yeah. Honey Boy took it this way. Well, I feel like rambling the whole world around.
Yeah.
I feel like rambling the whole world. And this was a special lick. Now I feel like rambling now. Ever since my baby put me down. I feel like rambling. Rambling the whole world around.
Yeah, that's Honey Boy.
I feel like rambling. Rambling the whole world around. I feel like rambling now. Ever since my baby put me down. That's his lick, boy.
That's his lick. That's sure his lick.
That's another lick, man. Rock was my pillow. Mm-hmm. Cold ground was my sleeping cot.
Yeah. He used to sing that with Tommy McLennan around Greenwood.
Cold ground was my pillow. Cold ground was my sleeping cot.
Yeah.
Moon was my night light. And the darkness covered me up. This is like black cat told a white cat, let's go cross town and clown.
Peter Wheatstraw. That's Peter Wheatstraw number that
Black cat told a white cat, say let's go cross town and clown. Say now there ain't no women around. We go on the other side of town.
All right. You know, you playing that. Honey Boy would have loved that, but you did what Honey Boy told me he used to do when he figured out about how you got to make a record, how you prepare for a record. Well, you steal a verse from over here and another verse from over here, and you needed a break in the middle, and you put these different verses together. Didn't matter where they came from, and he'd throw them all in one song. And you just did that with those different tunes that he did.
Different tunes that Honey Boy did and put them in.
That was exactly the process that Honey Boy used to use when he was coming up in the Delta, putting songs together. So you just did that exactly the way he would have done it. That's really cool.
So you think he would approve?
Yeah, damn right he would approve.
Okay. All right. Are we doing another one? Is that it?
I don't know what the...
Oh, let's see. Well, Oh, you're going to let him come back later? Okay, all right then. You sound good. All right, thanks, man.
Mr. Ben Payton. How about it?
Yeah, Mr. Ben Payton. Michael Frank, don't forget his book here. We got a number of great people in the house. I'm gonna also have to say that Gus Redmond couldn't make it. I asked my dear friend Bobby Rush if he would sit in on this because he knows a lot about what's going to happen here. So maybe you can find Bobby's tent and put it in place of Gus Redmond. Where's Professor Reuben Hughes? Come on up, Reuben. Y'all will know a little bit about Reuben. Y'all get to reading about him because he's something special. One of the oldest living DJs in the history of radio right here in Greenwood, Mississippi. He has to tell you some stories. There's some interesting stories. Talk about the chittlin circuit finances. Well, radio was certainly one of them. Also, I'm going to let Preston Lauterbach introduce the concept behind chittlin circuit radio. And the other thing I want to do, too, while I'm rambling up here is a Gibson. Where's Dawn? Is Dawn in the house? Hey, Dawn. And Aaron, that's right. I just met Aaron. We've been driving. He got us here safely, too, boy. We've had some interesting turns by being in Memphis, doing some filming and recording. But it's been a beautiful experience. But Dawn has been with us 3 years now. The Gibson Company has been very gracious to partner with us in many ways to help make sure these musicians get to and fro. So, Dawn, I want to thank you in behalf of the Gibson Company. Thank you so much. Also, Reuben is coming up here, but he's been a great contributor too, with his own radio station for doing much of what we needed done. And you cannot do without people who are willing to give you their time and for the love of money. He always been very supportive. The Memphis Blues Society has been an integral part of what we're doing. We have in the house Mr. Mark Caldwell. You stand? Yes, that's right, one of the presidents of the Memphis Blues Society group. Also, there'll be a lot of readings going on, but I want to make one special effort too. We have to continue to think about those surveys. I hope people on the outside, we're trying to make sure nobody gets out without filling out a survey. But in behalf of that, Mr. Rolando Hertz has a survey that we're also doing in behalf of the Mississippi Delta National Heritage Area, which is vitally important to the survival of that particular money that Rolando is getting his hands on. So it's being distributed throughout Mississippi. Now, Rolando is not spending that money on his own because he already got fancy cars and clothes. I've seen him. So he don't need no money. So he's getting his money for somebody else. So please fill out the survey. Yeah, have one of the young bloods that's walked in the house too, Christian. Raise your hand up, buddy. We call him Kingfish now. You're looking good, too. Yeah, we have Bill Perry coming up, too. He'll probably tell us about Kingfish. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Preston Lauterbach.
Well, we're going to hear something about one of the really vital aspects. There he is. So we're going to talk. We're going to hear from several of the participants in one of the most vital elements of chittlin circuit, the chittlin circuit business, really, and that is radio. And when you think about BB King, who we're here honoring, and you think about his roots and his beginnings and how he was able to grow and to promote himself, as much as recording, if not more, was his experience in radio. And so just as the chittlin circuit was made up of sort of the African-American enterprises that were separate, segregated from white enterprises in the entertainment business and real estate and every other part of life, there was also African-American, strictly African-American radio, which began right after World War II in Memphis with radio station WDIA. And many of the greats, including Mr. Bobby Blue Bland, Johnny Ace, BB, got their start broadcasting and selling things, products like Pepticon and Hadacol, which made you feel real good for some reason. They were medicines that were heavily laced with alcohol, so you couldn't help but feel a little better after a spoonful of that. And so it was, really a fascinating do-it-yourself kind of an operation from the very beginning, but that had, real vital importance to getting the artists out. So what BB would do would get up there on the radio on WDIA. He had a 15-minute show early in the day. He'd play some himself, play some records, but then he'd make sure and tell everybody, come on out and see me tonight at the 16th Street Grill across the bridge in West Memphis. And so he grew his brand to speak the young folks' language from there. And so we're going to hear a little bit more about the importance of radio to spreading this music and this enterprise. And I will now introduce our panel moderator, who we heard from earlier, Mr. Robert Terrell.
Good morning again. So, again, my name is Robert Terrell. I'm the Director of Operations for the BB King Museum, and we're a partner in this great event. And on my panel here today, I have some really wonderful guys who I happen to know a lot about. One of them just recently learning, Mr. Archer, but of course Mr. Reuben Hughes, that go way back with me, and Mr. Bobby Rush. One of the things that Preston brought out, which was really important, that in 1948, the first black all-program radio station hit the airways. That was with WDI changing over to all-black programming. And one of the reasons why they did that initially was to what? Sell to black folks. I mean, it was, we have all these products. We have ethnic products, and we need to move them. So let's create all-black radio stations so we can do that. Now, as a part of the chittlin circuit, what really made that important was the music. So a lot of these guys end up being played on those stations, and once they were played on the station, that helped to support that chittlin circuit, because now the guys are going to go to the show to hear the guys that they heard on the radio, which really made it important. So now one of the guys who I know that started out on radio in my conversations with him when he was 14 is Mr. Reuben Hughes, who's from Greenwood, Mississippi. He actually owned WGNL, WGNG radio station, and started, in addition to being on the radio, he moved into a record shop because, of course, from the radio, if you're going to sell the clubs, you also need to sell the records. So he moved into a record store and started selling the records. So Reuben has a long background in this, and what I want Reuben to do is just to talk about a little bit him and his beginning in the industry for us when he was 14. I know Reuben is actually on the blues marker in Forest, Mississippi for that I attended. And also there's a radio station, a DJ blues marker at his location here in Greenwood, where they're in Greenwood. So Reuben, talk a little bit about that for us. That's a cool cat, man. I call him that. They got cool papa. We call him Big Daddy, y'all, just so y'all know. If y'all see him in the streets, say, hey, Big Daddy.
No, the coolest man in the house is Mr. Bobby Rush sitting to my left over here. I call him Mr. Grammy.
Yeah. All right.
Quite an accomplishment. A little bit about Bobby Rush. I went to Chicago in 1972. Little did I know Bobby Rush was living about 5 blocks from my sister's house over on Racine, South Racine it was. And Bobby came by my sister's house, picked me up, carried me over to his house, and made me drunk. I was a younger man then, and I could put it away, but all those days are behind me. But anyway, I'm proud to be here and glad that Mr. Terrell and Doc Sanderson saw the need to invite me to talk a little bit about BB King and the rest of the older artists, because
I came along in those times. I can remember when, I don't know if you all remember Arthur Big Boy Crudup or not. Arthur Big Boy Crudup wrote Elvis's first hit, That's All Right. This was in 1954. And of course, back in then, artists didn't know anything about publishing. They didn't know anything about writing. All they knew was to pick up the guitar and sing the blues. So as a result, I doubt if Arthur Big Boy Crudup received a dime out of that record that sold millions. And that was the first step into the music change. Was a young man from Tupelo, Mississippi, and presided in Memphis, Tennessee, Elvis Presley. And Elvis was able to adopt black songs, black music, black artists, and go on from there. And the rest of it is history. Of course, you know Elvis did about 30 movies and so forth and so on, but he'll tell you right now he got his very first beginning from black churches, black entertainers, and black songwriters. And it went on from there, and the rest of it is history. And back to BB King. BB King, I first met BB King, and I've been knowing BB since 1948, when BB was at WDIA, and he and his first keyboard player was a young man named Ford Nelson, WDIA, a gospel director at WDIA, and he was BB King's first keyboard player. And he and BB started out together, and I think they named Pepticon. Pepticon sure is good. Is that right there, though? Yes. They named, back in then they had Pepticon, they had Acticon, and they had Hatticall, make you boogie on up the hill and all that. You older people will remember that. But anyway, BB has always been what you call a people's person. He deserves everything that you people are giving him, and he was a hard worker. I've known BB King to stay in his hotel room anywhere from 12 to 14 hours a day and do nothing but play that guitar. And I asked him once, what does it take to be successful? He said, be willing to work 12 to 14 hours a day, which most people ain't willing to do. But he did. And now he's given his just dues. Everybody's giving him his just dues. He's long been gone, but he deserves everything because he was really a kind gentleman. He was a people person. He wasn't a standoffish person, and he would treat you as if he'd been knowing you all your life. He was a great person, a great human being, and I'm just proud to be a part of this program. And as you know, BB dedicated a TV station and a radio station to Mississippi Valley State. How about a round of applause for that?
I think it's a recording studio. So BB did dedicate a recording studio here to Mississippi Valley, and that's one of the partners here, the BB King Recording Studio here in Mississippi Valley. So now let's get back into the radio part of it, because I want to really bring out that issue that BB started in radio, and that helped him to promote himself. You know, I like to see the little marketing skills, and I tell people now, you know, BB was kind of sharp there. You know, if you look at some of the early photographs, you'll see BB with the guitar, and you'll see him with WDIA 530 on the guitar, and then you see him with his name on it. So it's like, hey, I'm telling you who I am. You know, he started letting you know that I'm BB King, and I'm on the radio. I'm the same guy that's on the radio at 530, it's even WDIA. That really helped him out. So radio really played an important part, because once he started really playing on the radio, he started DJing on the radio, and his record started playing on the radio. That helped him to move out and start going farther and farther out of field. And that's as a result of radio. So let's go back to radio, Ruben. I know either one of you guys can jump in whenever you want to, because Bobby, I know you know a lot about this as well. Radio was really a big influence on helping to sell venues. And it is still today very important. Not as important as it used to be, but it's still important today. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's very important because, well, what happened basically, AM radio, because as you know, if you've been following it, FM just came in 1974, 75. And everybody was very familiar with AM radio. If you remember, we used to do that rhyming thing on radio, and that's where the hip-hop came in from.
Right, that's right.
You catch these guys, Jay-Z and the rest of your popular Snoop Dogg and all these guys, they got it from AM radio, you know. And that's boiling but the peas in the pot. They wouldn't be boiling if the water wasn't hot and all that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff we used to do on AM radio. Of course, when FM came, it changed, you know, just a little bit. So all your rappers and all your hip-hoppers got that from old DJs like myself, E. Rodney Jones, Chicago, Frankie Crocker, New York, and some of the Georgia Woods, Philadelphia, and some of the older DJs. And when FM came in, they took it to another level. And of course, as you know, radio changed somewhat when they relaxed the rule a few years ago so that you could own as many radio stations as you could in a market, which was a defeat to me, because most of you will remember when Lyndon Johnson owned that TV station in Austin, Texas. He in Ladyburg wouldn't let nobody come in there. Nobody but nobody could go into Austin, Texas when they owned that TV station. But now, as the rule has been relaxed and you can own as many stations as you want to in a market. And this, to me, it was a defeat because we had a monopoly back in then, but it's no more. So, and where BB King came in, they owned WDIA in Memphis, Tennessee. KDIA, I believe, was in Oakland, California. It was the Sunderland group that owned radio, two radio stations back then, and they programmed to black people. That's how BB King was able to get into radio. Now, back when I went into radio in the 50s, you couldn't sit in the control room. The white man had to work the controls. I had to do my show from other studio. I gave him the records and told him what records to play, and he played them. And I had to introduce the song as far as we could get. But all of that's, you know, neither here nor there now. And back when BB King went into radio with Ford Nelson, like I said, I was his first keyboard player, was a man named Ford Nelson. I think Ford is still living, isn't he? Mm-hmm. He's got to be an old man. Pretty old. Yeah, and that's how BB King became into radio, because they named Acton, Pepticon, and all of this good stuff back in then. And that's what made the chittlin circuit so famous, was radio. And the chittlin circuit got popular through people like, most of you people will remember people like Jimmy Reed. Most people will remember old artists like Smokey Hawk. Percy Mayfield. Yeah. And all of these are older musicians who really made this thing happen. And of course, a lot of them got credit and a lot of them didn't get credit. A lot of them got paid and a lot of them didn't get paid. But that's what brought about the chittlin circuit. And Bob is a younger man. He'll remember some of that stuff.
He's a younger man.
Yeah, you know, I just want to add to this. I just want to say that thank God for people like BB King, but thank God for people like you. Now, when I started off in 1951, there was a lot of AM radio station playing the blues. Not many left now, so I want to take my hats off to you, because you one of the few guys who are left still playing the blues.
That's right.
I can say this, I remember, I know, and I called him Sugar Daddy.
That's it.
And that we call each other Sugar Daddy like that, because we know each other from way back. I want to clear up one thing about, he said I made him drunk in Chicago. I did not make him drink.
It was alcohol in it.
Yeah, I didn't make him drunk. The alcohol did it. I got to tell you this. He came to my house. We've been friends for 50 years or more than 50 years. And he wouldn't get out of the car. And he said, I'm going to sit here for a few minutes to give me some air. This was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I looked at it 5:30, 6 o'clock, he's still sitting in the car in Chicago with his leg out the door, and all his money still in his pocket.
Oh yeah.
In Chicago. but I said that to get you to laugh. I tell you, I don't know why you brought me up on this about the chittlin circuit, because I am a chittlin circuit. But some people don't know, but he knows that. Willie probably didn't know that I was part of WVON. I never talked about this. But I was the third partner of investment in VON. I never tell nobody about that. For 47 years, I've been a part of WVON. And I own a piece of WVON. And I've been there all the time, you know. And a purpose man twist my arm and and so on and so on. So I leave that. That's an indebtedness. I would probably never get paid for that one.
You can forget it. Purvis don't remember it now. So
he don't remember that.
Yeah, he don't remember.
But he do. But there again, I want to say to you and all the people who's in the radio now, we's out of control. A lot of people's out of control, although they own the station. But you one of the few men who's still in control of what goes on in your station. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you.
You have anything to add to that, Brother Archer? Brother Archer has been on the road for a long time, played with just about everybody you can name. I mean, he had, on the first album that BB King and Bobby Bland did together, the live album, this was the saxophone player on it, Mr. Theodore Archer.
Hello. How's everybody doing? I can't hear you. Hello. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, yes. I want to give you a little brief history on my career in the music business and kind of let y'all know why I'm involved in this. When I was about 12 years old, I was trying to play drums. The band director said he didn't need any more drummers. So he told Mother she had to get me a clarinet. So I got the clarinet and played it for a few years. And I was taught by several great teachers, Mr. Lionel Alexander, and most notably Mr. Edward Pratt, who later became Ray Charles' alto saxophone player. From that point, we had a great high school band, and then there was a band that was formed in my town called the Castanets. And one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up is that band influenced my life and made me want to be a professional musician. And John Jabbo Starks was the drummer in that band at the time. So he went on to play with Mr. Bobby Bland, just like myself. So that's another reason. I named my record label after that band, the Castanets. They were so bad at that time. They had 4 horns and a singer that did all of Elvis Presley's music. So they were very popular in Mobile. And I just liked what I saw, the charisma they had from the stage, the way they would entertain people. They would go in a house and, I mean, completely wreck it. The band would do that every night that they played. People were just mesmerized by their sound. So that made me want to imitate them. After Castanets, then Mr. Marshall York, another friend of mine, was a part of the BB King organization. And he's the one that got me my first job with Little Junior Parker, who was Mr. Bobby Bland's partner at the time. So the late Marshall York got me started. So we met BB King in 1958. The first time I saw him, he asked me what type of instrument was I playing. I told him a tenor saxophone. And he suggested that I listen to Coleman Hawkins. So listen to Coleman Hawkins and get his tone and pay strict attention to John Coltrane for the technique. So that was the thing that made me start paying attention to music closely. And from that time on, I've always admired BB King because as a young man, he took out time to talk to me, and I was a nobody at the time. And so later on, a couple of years later, he invited me to play with his band. I couldn't play with him because I fallen in love with the Bobby Bland organization, Mr. Joe Scott in the Bobby Bland organization. And Joe excuse me, Joe told me one day, he said, well, Theodore, you're the lead saxophone player with us. If you go over there with them, you're just gonna be a face in the crowd. So they kept me over there with them, and I loved it because I'm living off of what I learned from Bobby and Joe Scott and all the fellows right now, because I had a little education, but Joe finished it off by giving me all these writing and arranging skills. He didn't own a publishing company himself, but he suggested that I create one. So that's how I got into the record business, by being around Mr. Scott. He helped me so much with my musical education. So by not being able to go to school and get it all from the university, I got so much by being in his band. And I want to say this to the young people today. We are losing all of our cultural things to trash. You know, we're losing it. We're losing it. Now, we got to start studying some music because we're not developing any musicians today. Everybody want to blow up and be a rapper and use all this vulgar language to talk about each other and kill each other, and I don't like it at all. I'm really appalled at that. I'm having a problem with it. So now what we need to do, you all, we need to unite. Cultural enrichment is very important to us as black people. We're talking about the chittlin circuit now. See, just because you poor and disadvantaged and have a ragged house and have to go to the outhouse and to use the bathroom, all doesn't mean your brain can't be developed. So let's stop talking about what we don't have and start using what we got to get where we need to go.
That's right.
That's what we got to do. We got to stop being so critical of each other, talking about each other. We need to start working with what we have. And that's what I did. I'm still poor. I don't have anything. But I own Castanet Records and Pritchard Music Company, and I just started a 10-piece band. I'm not rich, but I got a band that can make me rich, you see? You see what I mean? So I want y'all to think about that. Let's start trying to own a piece of the pie instead of working for the other folks. I don't believe that we're going to get anywhere until we become independent entrepreneurs. Young people, I'm talking especially to you, learn how to do something that you can control and contain and develop yourself. And stop wasting up your money. See, y'all got to learn how to hold on to this money, because if you don't keep the money, you can't buy nothing. You can't advance your career without no money. See, the people in my time, they got mad at me when I was with Bobby. They used to call me the miser. Miss Bland might know something about this. They called me the miser because I didn't spend my money. See, I saved my money and bought me some equipment with it. Okay. They say, okay, the miser. Okay, so I want y'all to think about that.
Okay, so now we've established that for sure that the black radio really played a vital part in the success of the chittlin circuit, for sure, you know? So now what I want to know from you guys, I know you know a lot of the places and a lot of the people involved, especially in the earlier days of it. Tell me where some of the radio stations were located in some of the cities. And I know, Ruben, you had an opportunity to work in places, Chicago, Houston, and Mobile, and different places. Where were some of the black radio stations that existed during those days?
Well, I could easily tell you there was a town near Detroit, Michigan. Doc Bell owned WCHB in, was that Inkster, Michigan?
Ypsilanti was in. Ypsilanti. Inkster right next to Ypsilanti. The tower was in Ypsilanti, Michigan.
Ypsilanti, Michigan, yeah. And he was one of the first black owners.
Right.
And then, of course, you had hats off to the people that really owned the radio stations, like New Orleans, Houston, Memphis, and other stations. They always used black talent.
That's right.
And that's how I got started. They used black talent and hat because we were normally programming to black audiences. Because the VGNL is a black-owned station, but we got many white listeners, many white listeners listen at 104.3. And in fact, we just went on the Worldwide Net. We get calls from Indianapolis, Indiana, Chicago, Gary, Indiana, Detroit, Michigan, Houston, Texas, Dallas, Texas. We get calls from everywhere, you know, because we are one of the few stations that still program the blues.
That's right.
And as lightly as you take it, the blues is one of the biggest drawing cards that we have now.
That's right. That's right.
And the reason I mention the blues because we talking about BB King, who was blues orientated. Now, of course, BB King could play jazz. He often talk about the Jug, Gene Ammons.
Wait, Rudy, and I get that point too, but what I want to get to right now is that I know you guys know Brother Arthur mentioned entrepreneurship. And I really want the audience to understand that there were a lot of guys who over the country who bought radio stations and played music over the country that you guys have been affiliated with over the years. One in particular, I know one of the guys, he was an entertainer, but he also owned stations, was Mr. James Brown. So let's talk about some of those guys who you know that own stations across the country that helped to support what you guys were doing, because that was very important.
Yeah, well, most of your, Bobby can tell you too, because Bobby's all over the country. It's strange. I was talking to a man from New York about something else, and he said, hey, do you know an entertainer down there named Bobby Rush? I said, how well do I know him? He said, I had a flat tire, and Bobby came to my aid. He came to my aid and helped me on the road, helped me get on the way, and said, I never will forget the guy. And said, he lives in Mississippi somewhere. I said, yeah, of course he does.
Yes.
And Bobby has been around and been a friend of radio ever since he got started. He had a record called Chicken Head.
Right.
That's where I first met Bobby. I used to call him Mr. Chicken Head in Chicago. And most of your predominantly black-owned stations are in the South. Columbus, Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, New Orleans, Louisiana, of course, right here at you, Memphis, Tennessee, Jackson, Mississippi, and they not a whole lot of them, but they are predominantly in the South. And I've been trying to get my people in Washington, D.C. to do what they call a conference on National Association of Black-Owned Broadcasters in Atlanta, Georgia. But they always found, you know, reasons to keep it in New York and Washington, D.C., but everybody can't get to New York and Washington, D.C., but back to your question, Robert, most of your black-owned stations is in the South. That's what you want to know. Oklahoma City?
Yeah.
And do you know any of those owners? I mean, I know like Rip Daniels down there on the Gulf Coast.
Daniels,
different
Gulfport,
people.
Mississippi?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And two of them in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
And Tulsa?
Yeah.
Right.
Don't y'all forget my cousin in Hattiesburg, Mr. Vernon Floyd.
Yeah, Vernon, yeah.
Two
Yeah.
Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
WRB and WJMG.
Right.
And also, I know he don't want me to mention this, but that's where he got his start at with my cousin in Hattiesburg. He decided that he was going to create him a radio station. They didn't see eye to eye. He didn't think as big as Mr. Hughes, so now Mr. Hughes owns two very powerful stations. My cousin still owns a little teeny-weeny station. He got 50,000 watts. See, that's why I'm saying we need to watch what we do when we out here. We need to get along with each other, see, because networking is the way to get rich out here, folks. Working together. If you don't work together, you won't make it. And I wish I could tell Cuz that, because, see, with this 50,000 watt radio station, see, they could do some interacting there where they could switch off some things. But you got to think big, and you can't be narrow-minded, you can't be envious and jealous and hard-headed. That's another thing.
Well, one of the other things that I noticed in a lot of the guys who own stations, you're talking about entrepreneurial, then the majority of those guys also spend into being promoters. So even the early DJs, a lot of those guys did the same thing. The E. Rodney Joneses and all that. I want you guys to bring these old names up because these people are the ones who actually make this stuff work. So in addition to having a radio station, you had these guys behind the microphone, like the Sugar Daddy. I mean, that's his name on the radio station, Sugar Daddy.
But
so,
let me say something, because during them days, it's still like that. Really, he owns a station, But the biggest promoters is the guys who own the station and the DJ, because the DJ is promoters also.
That's right.
Because they know the artists, they play their records, they bring them to town. And people, we got to, as black people, we got to stop being ashamed of ourselves, what we do. We got to stop being ashamed of it, because somebody writing about the blues being something less than something else. And guess who writing about it? It's not black people that ain't writing about it.
You're right. So one of the other things, because I know we don't have a lot of time left on this this panel, and you guys excuse me for run over just a minute or so, but one of the other things I want to bring out is, in addition to those stations, there were also places.
That's right.
You know, theaters and clubs like Club Ebony. And I mentioned earlier that the state of Mississippi, when they formed the Blues Commission, the second marker they installed was at a club, and that was Southern Whispers over in Greenville on Nelson Street. And in addition to that, later came Club Ebony, number 84 in 2009, September 7, 2009. So those things are really important, and there are other places across the country that serve the same purpose as these places.
I want to say, I'm stretch a little bit, because we have to make sure that we go to black radios, the few that's left, they're doing things, and we have to continue to do things with the small black clubs. It's like Club Avenue, places like that. And I went through a situation not long ago where the promoter bring you in, you don't make the money. So now we got the manager say, we can't go on because we don't have our money. I know we don't have our money, but the promoter need a shot too. And they are black. We got to take our business back to the black people in the black neighborhood and do the black thing. We got to keep them alive, because it ain't but a few of them. If we don't keep you on the air, where are we gonna go? Right. It ain't many of us left. Let's face the fact. You got guys calling me every day. So, Bobby Rush, I got a new record. So, where you gonna get it played at?
Yeah.
What you gonna? Now you got a new record. You sing like a bird. Now what?
Yeah, that's very important, and that's the reason why we want to bring up radio, because radio in the chittlin circle is very important. Before we get out of here, I want to open up for some questions, because I know some of you guys have questions out there about this whole situation. So let's get some questions answered quick.
Well, I just want to represent St. Louis a little bit.
Love you.
WESL, the Weasel.
Right. That's right.
KTZ.
That's right.
The Catsman was on the prowl. If you saw your bumper sticker, you get a case of peanut butter. That's right. And just to give you a little enlightenment, a couple of the jocks there was Dr. Jockenstein. Leo Cheers, the man in the red vest.
That's right.
And a little piece of history, the Beatles were brought to St. Louis. The Beatles were brought to St. Louis by Regal Sports.
Yes.
A black promoter.
Yes. And we, as an entertainer, don't get a black promoter a shot, because soon they don't have the first dollar. We run and tell the people they didn't pay us, and that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yeah. At one point, you had to keep going in that circuit, because that's the only place you could work in for a while. So you had to still deal with those people. And I know at some point there were people who would at least give you something to eat or something. You know, before you left, you got something to eat and you were back on the road. So we have another question here.
Yes.
Your name from this document, but one man was from Jackson, Mississippi. He got to Chicago, he forgot the name, Al Benson.
Al Benson.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Al Benson.
That's right, Al Benson.
The relationship between Rich Stam, Open the Door Rich.
Open the Door Rich.
And Early.
That's right.
Open the door Rich.
Open the door Rich. You know.
There's one more question there, Mr.
The
Scrapper.
question is just add to
Okay, go ahead.
Don't forget our Mayor Charles Evans playing the blues in Jackson, Mississippi.
WMPR. WMPR. You know, we were speaking about, we don't get into that political thing. We were speaking about station owner. That's not a station owner.
Yeah, that's
you got to know what you're talking about when you're talking about that.
Yeah, but he played blues. Yeah. But let's go to Dr. Huddleston.
That's another
Dr. Huddleston, you got a question there, right?
Yeah. I want to raise a point going back to my homeboy, Mr. Hughes. We worked together to get his historical marker and everything at WGNL. But I also mentioned Meridian, Mississippi. WQIC down there when I used to hear when I was a real young man and you were older man. But that's a joke, y'all. We both say that. But I heard you all mention all the big cities, Houston and all of these areas. But I remember Mr. Hughes coming to Meridian and then going through Alabama, some small town. And I know, now from this, because who knows the civil rights movement, Meridian was a tough place. The boys from Philadelphia got credit for the 3 civil rights workers, and most of them were from Meridian.
That's right.
The rest of them got on top of the white building, like John Richburg out of Nashville. Everybody thought he was black, but he played blues all over the South, white guy. But Mr. Hughes then went into these small towns, and I know it wasn't the most comfortable thing in Mississippi at the time to go in the East. Like y'all talking about Honey Boy a long time ago, they were the Honey Boys of the 60s and the 70s. These folks would run you out of everything and disturb it. How did you make it in these small places?
Well, what happened was I got educated at a very early age. We didn't have much money, but I was able to get to Nashville on scholarship. And I did 2 years at Tennessee State University. And most of you will remember Willie White. I was in school with Willie. Yeah. We ran track together. We was on the same track team. And of course, I came to Meridian. My home is a little town called Forest, Mississippi, Scott County, 45 miles from Jackson. Most of you know where it is. And that's where the first Blues Trail marker is. And I stopped by the radio station, and the man that owned the station was a movie producer. He named Lord Royer. He owned all the movie theaters in Laurel, Waynesboro, Mississippi, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, Meridian, on all over. Very wealthy man, gave me my first job. And after I stayed there for a while, they decided they wanted me full-time. I worked out so well until I went to work full-time, and I stayed at Meridian up until I left. Well, that was my first beginning. And from there, I've been to Chicago, been to New York, been to Detroit, been to Houston, Texas, been to, where else? Mobile, Alabama, somewhere everywhere. New Orleans, Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I've been all over.
Yeah, Hughes has been in radio stations all over the country, I tell you. Yep. I remember him going to Chicago and having to deal with the same type of issues that he dealt with down south in Chicago.
Yeah.
That was another thing. So right now, I guess the panel is kind of ending. I think there are no more questions. One more question there? We can get that one. Okay.
Is your attitude towards suffering. Suffering is very creative.
Yeah.
And what blues people have done is taken suffering to a higher level that benefits us spiritually, financially, and emotionally, in all kinds of ways. Suffering is not the booger bear people say it is when you know what to do with it.
All right, that's great. So radio in the chittlin circuit, we know it existed, and it really helped to make things work properly. And I want to thank this fine group of gentlemen who gave you all this information today. And we'll allow Dr. Sanders to come back to the podium and take it from here. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. Yeah. You can't miss Ruben because he gonna always be brightly colored dressed. That's right, that's Ruben.
And what we're doing is we're altering the schedule a little bit. We're going to have some music done, and then we're going to end up
make a
going
quick
to
little
lunch.
change.
We're going to
I
get
asked the musicians
two
to come up
selections out of these guys.
that were scheduled up.
I don't know what happened else. But
just, okay, y'all back there, come on.
But it,
Oh, they got it together. Okay, they're still in. Anyway, what we're going to do is they want to do a little tribute. Unfortunately, C.O. Johnson was not able to make it, and we're going to have Jesse Robinson
my friend
to fill
like you
in.
and Robert.
Ray Neal be on guitar, and I think Joe on drums, and Eric Edwards on piano.
No.
And I don't know what else is happening.
I said that to laugh joke.
So how's my dear friend, Mr. Walter Riley?
It makes me feel so good, and I'm so blessed
You're in the house.
to do what I do,
doing?
and now make a little
That's one of the
living
guys that play with BB.
like to do so well.
Most of his life.
So I thank
and I
all
also
who
have want to
The
recognize
one who
our
voted,
artists. If
who
I can get
thought I
Brad
should have
Bernard to
this.
stand up, Rosalind
And I also
Wilcox.
accept this because the many
These the
guys came
artwork
along
that you see around the wall.
when I did and before I did.
You can't, you
never
might
got a
can't
chance to
afford
win
it.
anything
You know,
in this magnitude. So I accept this award in behalf of the gentlemen, ladies and men who never gotten it. So this to them.
Yeah, this particular session that we're about to have is going to have, I say, special implications for the program, because we really do want to talk about the life of these individuals as they have lived on the chittlin circuit. The chittlin circuit, of course, stretched a long span of time in terms of a physical development, and you've heard much information about it in terms of its historical purpose and what is going on. But there's a certain brand that has developed over time where the chittlin circuit name stuck to it, and it kind of created its own thing. And from that point on, every time you went and played those circuits, they still kind of remain to be called the chittlin circuit. Even today, people still feel like they're playing on the chittlin circuit. And we know it doesn't exist in that fashion anymore. But these gentlemen, in their own right, has been dealing with a lifestyle of being musicians, and they've never stopped. Some of them, like Bobby Rush, has millions of dollars, and others, like me, he's still trying to make a penny. So that's just the way it is, yo. He got 10 houses on one block. Because he got one block on 10 houses. That's it. Well, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I still think I would be remiss. I got a gentleman in here that I want to bring back to the platform, and we're going to have, and I like the way he's put things. You know, he's tried to make us understand that it's a certain culture. Am I still on? Yeah. So everybody can hear me? No. I don't know what happened to the sound. Oh, that's what's happening. Okay. So anyway, if you can hear me, what I'm getting at is there's been a definite description of how the business of black music changed the way we see the music industry today. And because there was a segregation involved, those things were developed, and that culture was developed based on the fact that black people were dealing with black people. And if you know anything about black people dealing with black people today, it's still a headache. But we find ourselves still making strides, still trying to understand the business ethics that we have to deal with, you know, and branding, rebranding, branding, rebranding, you know, and trying to make ourselves who we are. There was a statement that was made by Rufus Thomas. If you go over to the BB King Museum, he said that he said I didn't have to try to be black. And he was talking about, he says, whites had to try to understand what we were doing. He said, but I was already the thing, right? Now, whatever that meant to Rufus Thomas, we still know that there's a certain kind of progression that's going on in this music. You can never, it's a genetic code, and I always tell people, it has nothing to do with race. if you really break it down to its common denominator, it still has nothing to do with race. The reason race was such a factor is because in America, segregation was a factor. But if you're born in France, you're going to speak French. That's just a fact. Yep. If you're born into a blues society culture, I know, don't you know white guys that play blues? I mean, we can go down from Johnny Winters down if we want to call it that. But there are some guys. I remember stories about Charlie Parker and Red Rodney. Red Rodney was a white guy. Charlie Parker had to tell everybody he was an albino in order for him to be in the band to come south to play, because there was no such thing as integrated bands, right? And so Red Rodney would play along the game. He said, I guess I'm going south. So let me put my albino thing on together. Right? So those things existed. We heard stories about having to have a show where men had to dress like women. Sometimes it was necessary in many other fashions. The reason that was going on. Sometimes it was an acceptance factor that you had to be a clown and play it off to make it happen for yourself. So those things are still a part of it. But these gentlemen have lived this history, and I want to bring Preston back up. Yeah, I want you to, he didn't even know I was going to do this. I'm going to throw you into the lines there. I'm going to bring my white brother up. And he's going to deal with all these bosses again. Bobby Rush already told you how he feels. So. It's good though. But this history is important and it's necessary. So it'll be all. Do you want to, is it a part of me moving it over? Check, testing, 1, 2, check, testing, 1, 2. Is that better? Yeah. So what I'm going to do is this. Move this over. Probably get that out of the tag so it don't pick up those other mics. But what I want you to do is pick their brains. This is the most dangerous guy right here.
I'll start with him.
Oh, you start with him.
So, I tell you what, everybody hear this okay?
Yeah.
There we go. Let me see if I can adjust that for height.
If you talk straight into it, turn it, instead of pointing it up, point it right at you.
How about that?
There you go.
Okay. I'm going to tell you what is so important about this group of gentlemen that we have gathered before us here. They represent so many different facets of the culture and the music and the life that we're here celebrating. So the circuit was not just about entertainers, it was about venues. So this gentleman dressed so moderately here is Mr. Teddy Johnson, the proprietor of Teddy's Blues Club located in Louisiana. To his left, with some spiders all over him, don't tell him no, is a gentleman by the name of Scrap Iron. And he spent the bulk of his career as a road manager for Little Milton. To his left, needs no introduction, but we'll do it anyway, Grammy Award-winning Bobby Rush. To his left, we've got Ray Neal, a sideman and lead man as well, extraordinary, beautiful guitarist who treated us to some tasty licks before lunch. Over next to him is Bill Howell and Matt Perry, recording artist. Also with Little Milton for a time, is that right, on the road? So Milton is one of the real unifying factors here. We got Mr. Jesse Robinson down beside him, representing a number of facets of the business, club owner, musician, and then,
Ed Milton.
also with Milton for a while, right? So Milton, yes, we remember you. And down here we have Big George Brock, who has run clubs in St. Louis and was the star of the film We Juke Up in Here, and is a terrific recording artist in his own right. So we've got so many different perspectives, and I'm going to get mine out of the way. I have one question, and we'll start with Mr. Johnson and work our way down. So how did you survive?
Well, you know, the way I survived, I come from a family of preachers, tavern owners. And I just wasn't going to give up. And survival is as of today. Yesterday morning I got called up. I was turned down for a loan because to pay out my business wasn't the name that it is. But there is nothing that's going to stop Teddy from surviving, because I am the Billy Rubbing Titty Sucking Nipple Squeezing Pain a Man.
ahead, Byron. Follow that.
He wasn't intended.
Follow survival.
Yes, sir.
You ain't gonna worry me. First of all, I'd like to say good evening, and I'd like to thank the staff and the doctor and everybody who invited me to be a part of this. All them big words, I ain't with them. I brought some pictures, ladies and gentlemen, that I want you to see. I'm gonna get back what you asked me. But I brought some pictures I wanted everybody to see of people I've had the opportunity to be on the chittlin circuit with. And the first one, I'm so proud of him, I don't know what to do. And we were on show behind shows behind shows. It's my good friend, Mr. Bobby Rush. Or should I say Grammy winner, Mr. Bobby Rush. From me to you, dog. Next one is my good friend, the late Mr. Bobby Blue Blaine. The young man I served over 31 years, the one and only, late great, Mr. Campbell. Now you talking about chittlin circuit, Mr. Oddie Blues Boy White, Mr. Tyrone Davis, Chicago's own Mr. Jesse Tolliver, and of course yours truly. This picture was taken in the Checkerboard Lounge in 1973. I like to share this with you. It was my birthday. You know how your brother was. He wouldn't give me no present, but he wrote on a napkin. You want to read it?
Better read it first.
We're gonna leave that alone. But in order to survive the chittlin circuit, you had to have it in here and in here. What I mean by that is, everywhere you went, it was always I'm not gonna use the word, I was gonna say a blockage. I can go forward and tell you about the traveling and how it was at the Union 76. When we used to pull up in there for fuel, you had to go around to the back and give your order to the black cook. We couldn't go up in there like they do now and have T-bone steaks and baked potatoes and all that. It wasn't that kind of party. Wherever we went, we were always recognized. And it was survival behind survival behind. Once upon a time, we didn't even have places to stay. We stayed at people's house, or the club owner made preparation for us to stay somewhere. But what's going on now, though, it's just like this gentleman said earlier. We need to go back to the basics of our music. We done lost it, ladies and gentlemen. And it's your fault. Because you always want to down this music called blues. Young folks say it depresses them. If you're black, you were born in the world, you're already depressed. Because you go through changes every day. This music is a part of you. And when you hear these guys up here singing this music and playing this music, basically they're playing it from their heart. They're talking about lyrics that mean something in your life. It doesn't mean that it happened, but it could happen. So we need to go back to our basics. We need to go back to our dressing. We need to go. One thing about a blues musician, you see the way these guys dress? That's the way we dress. When we hit the stage, we didn't look like we came from Walmart. We were dressed to impress. And saying that, church.
Let me speak a little about Survivor. Survivor to me means everything. You have to know how to survive. What I have strived all of my life is the thing that I could not do, because the things I could do would take care of itself. I know what the places I wouldn't want it, I wouldn't welcome. I realized that before I walk in. It was like going in the woods. If you know a snake in the wood, suddenly you wear boots, because you know the snake's in the wood. What I want to tell you at the chittlin circuit is today, it looks different, but really haven't changed. It remained the same. It's almost like when I came up as a country boy with an outside toilet. And my daddy made a toilet with 3 seats in it, like somebody gonna come in there with you. But now we have the houses built with many toilets, with a bathroom in your house. Smells good and everything. But what you do in them haven't changed. So I'm saying to you, everything have changed, remained the same. We still have the chittlin circuit, whether you're working in Conoco Hall or working in the juke jump or what have you. I have a friend of mine, like I said, he said this, Clearwater's, where is it? It is in the back, behind me, in the back. Where? Behind the curtain. I want to say that when he come out, early in the 50s, I guess myself and Eddie Clearwater, one of the first black men who was high on Rush Street. They had a club that called Bourbon Street, said no color allowed. They hired me, because I thought I wasn't colored, because they hired me. But I went in to get a job, chittlin circuit I'm talking about now, to get a job with 4 white guys. But when I went, after the audition, I went with the 4 black guys. So Kunch said, where's the band? I said, right here. He said, oh God, you're gonna get me killed, because we can't integrate this place. Well, I was too embarrassed to tell the people I didn't know what integrate was. I went to find, let's integrate. I went in the door, the boy said, well, Bobby Rush, we integrated this place tonight. I thought integrate was something that in the slavery, because I thought I was a pretty good young 20-year-old, 22-year-old guy. I thought it was use me to make good slaves. I said, well, maybe I can make a good integrator. But I'm saying that to let you know that we walked out of, we called the chittlin circuit into a situation, treated us just like the chittlin circuit. So it haven't changed, it remained the same. It's alive and it's a well. We have to face the fact. But music is a link to our soul and a link to us as a people getting together. But we never forget, we should never forget where we come from. The bridge that brought us across. I'm here, I won a Grammy at 83 years old. I'm so proud I won, so happy that I won. Yes. And I want another one, I want all of you to win. But I want to win better than you. So don't be ashamed of the chittlin circuit. It's music, it's black music, and I'm proud of me and the music that I do.
Yeah, survivor. Well, when we came up, we was blessed, because we come up under my dad, Ray Fannia. And you talking about somebody could survive. Yes, yes. Because he had 10 kids and was a musician. He didn't have a day job till we got up in age. Then he decided he'd go to work. But we come up under him, and he taught us everything it was to know about survival. Because we used to get to the club, the drummer done left a drumstick or a cymbal, he'd go out there and get a stick out the tree. You gonna make this gig. Yep. Right? That's how you came up surviving. And when we got old enough to move on. He had set us up to play with anybody. Didn't care who it was. If, I mean, you wanted to play blues, you wanted to play left funk, whatever you wanted to play. When you left my daddy band, and I'm not talking about just his kids, other musicians, they could go on and play with everybody. Because I remember when I first met Bobby Rush, I asked him, did he need a guitar player? After I told him who my daddy was, he said, yeah. I had that job. Lil Milton, Mr. Bland, it wasn't no hesitation. Because I guess they knew what kind of family I come from and my dad. But right today, my grandkids be telling me, Popo, man, you'll make anything work. That's survival. All right.
Well, I can relate to that surviving situation. And because the first thing with myself is, the question asked, for all of this fame or whatever it is that you want, what are you willing to sacrifice to get it? And there's been a lot of things that I sacrificed. And, and I have to say, there's an old saying that if you love your work, you'll never work a day in your life. Yeah. And I've never worked a day in my life. Yeah. And thank you. Yes. And was talking about Little Milton a few minutes ago. Well, he's the one that actually gave me my first chance to get in front of a microphone when I was playing with him years ago. And so really, he gave me the courage to get out, to do it for myself. And I also have to say that we used to rehearsal in Bobby's basement years ago. But see, there is nothing that I look at that was standing in the way of me doing what I want to do. I love this. Talking about being from the country. I mean, my daddy was a sharecropper. He made moonshine. He did whatever he could to make a dollar. And he was also a drunk, so I've never really had anything to do with alcohol. But I tell you, to this day, I must say I've had my feet on the ground in 13 different countries. In fact, I've taken the blues somewhere that to this day, I don't know of any other blues person that ever took blues to a Muslim country. Yes, we did that. And they loved every second of it. But I just made up my mind that I would do it my way. And my first CD, I think it was called, it was Reason I Sang the Blues. It was the most played record on XM satellite radio, thanks to Bill Wax and a few other people. So that gave me a little bit more courage. But I don't regurgitate what other people have done. I like writing my own songs, and basically everything I do. Every now and then I may put in a cover song or something like that. But I like doing my own songs and stuff like that, my own arrangements. And also I played with the late Johnny Taylor. I've had the opportunity to back up Freddie King, the late T-Bone Walker, and Clarence Carter, just to name a few along the way. And so as far as the chittlin circuit is concerned, well, it's in my blood. And I have to also say that if I had a $100 bill for every time I've ate chitlins, well, because see, we also raised our own animals, for slaughter, hogs, cows, chickens, you name it. And so, the hand-slung chitlins, you probably don't know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about, don't you, Bob? Yes, indeed. So, that's the world that I came from, and I never, really thought that I would do the things that I've been involved with over the years. I did a movie some years back with Cuba Gooding Jr. I appeared on the Gene Simmons Family Jewel show. In fact, I just, within the last couple of weeks, was involved with a documentary about Robert Johnson. It's going to come out on Netflix. I don't know when, but I got a feeling a lot of people is going to get pissed off at me. for the way I tell my version of Robert Johnson's story. You know, I don't think that, talk about selling his soul at the crossroads and stuff like that, that's just a myth. You know, just like any of us, Jesse, you name it, Mickey, all of us that can play, we all had to do one thing. We had to practice to do it. And that's what Robert did. And that's the way I like telling the story. But, you know, I want to thank everybody, you know, for letting me be here today. You know, I get to run off at the mouth. I am howling mad. And by the way, I was just told last night the Mothers Against Drunk Driving is urging me to stop using my name. So I'm looking forward to meeting them in court. You know, that should be a very interesting situation. I've been howling mad for over 40 years and have no plans for nobody to stop. But, you know, as far as BB is concerned, well, we opened the show for him, it was some years back, I think it was the mid-90s over at Club Ebony. But I also had the pleasure of working with the same record label that he was on, but I was in the gospel department, contemporary gospel, ABC Dunhill, and I had some pretty interesting conversation with B a few times, you know, out there. This was in California is where the label was at. But great person, you know, easy to listen to, and the information that he passed on and stuff like that has just been, you know, been very valuable. But, you know, I got a new song that I wrote that I'm thankful for the blues. And it'll be coming out on my next CD. And I really am thankful for the blues because I'm living my dream. And like Bobby here, you know, I've been after that Grammy myself, but it's been eluding me.
Maybe this is the opportunity right here.
Maybe this is the opportunity. But thank you all very much and everything. And let me pass this mic on down.
It's Jesse's turn now to tell us about Survival.
Hello, my microphone is off.
There you go. You're on.
Well, we're on.
You're on.
How's everybody doing this evening? Is everybody pretty well surviving? We're here. I don't know whether I learned survival very well in my lifetime, but been around for a few minutes and I came from a family of 14, 7 boys and 7 girls. So evidently, mom and daddy knew how to survive. My father was a musician. He was a sanctified preacher. I started playing guitar, I don't know when. Still trying to learn some of the licks that I need to know from Rayford and all, and Bobby Rush. You know, Bobby Rush plays guitar too. You know, we all gonna have a class one day. But anyway, getting to survival, my old man, dad, and older sisters and brothers, we all was taught to work, learn, be concerned, be smart as you can, and today that pays off. Getting back to the chittlin circle, it's not only meant for musicians, it meant for if you black, you either eat chitlins or you're not, but you're living in the chittlin world. It doesn't make any difference whether you're a doctor or lawyer, if you're on the chittlin circle. The chittlin circle is the one that shuts you off and controls you to a point. So we all is in the chittlin circle. I think it's the popcorn circle now because the money that went back down less than what it was in the chittlin circle, Bobby Rush. You know, it don't mean nothing for you. I'm just going to use your name because you got the millions now. You understand? All right. But anyway, my thing is about survival is learn as much as you possibly can at any given time, in any situation, your surrounding, your culture. Keep in mind your culture. Don't give it away. We gave the blues away. We gave it away. That's right. You know, we say we didn't like it. Oh yeah, you like it because you were born in the blues. And I want to tell all the other races other than black race of people or African American, whatever you want. If you're a human being, you got some blues. So we need to take a look at it and figure out how the blues make you feel. Blues will make you feel like you're in Houston, Texas, if you know what I mean, if you know what I'm talking about. When things happen that you can't control and it's just happening, there's nothing you can do about it, make you sad, can't pay your bills, even death brings blues to you, the sad part. Now there's a happy blues. You know, once you figure out what the blues is, you can have a happy blues, because this is the way it's going to be anyway. You might as well rejoice over it and keep going, because the blues going to come in your life. So surviving, I don't think I ever learned how to finish that. I think it's every day, there's a hustle and a bustle. It's trying to survive. And first, integration and racism is well and alive. Is that we need to talk about it like we're talking about it today. I really enjoyed this panel today. I learned so much. What I learned, that people can openly speak about it with all races. That's what we need to do. And music is one of the things that people listen to behind closed doors, don't want to look at the other one and enjoy the music. But we need to talk about it like we're talking about it today. What is the chittlin circle? The chittlin circle is the black circle. Y'all heard that song? There's a song. I didn't write the song. How about that song, Strap-On?
Which one?
Okay, I'm going to tell you. Now, I got it now, Strap. Now, don't you pick up the mic. I got it, Strap. It's Strap. That was a song, and it is a song. Look it up online. Pull it up on your computer, your phone, and say, if you're white, you're right. If you're brown, you can stick around. And if you're black, you do what? Get back. It's saying something now. It exists, but you gotta survive through that and look further and further. And all people are not the same. Now you got some people that vote this way, but when they get with you, they all right. You want the all right part. Don't make no difference how you vote. Don't worry about that. Let's keep it straight. So that's the way I'll survive, dealing with people, figuring out how can we do something very positive together. It doesn't make any difference who you are, what you got, what you ain't got. And we can, that's my road to survival. And learn all the music you can, musicians. Just don't think something coming out of the top of your head, talking about I got a hit, this sounds good. There's structure, there's right and wrong. Learn your music before you put it out here and spend somebody's money and time with some garbage that you just throw it out here because you want a record. Learn the music, get with somebody that knows the music that you can trust on. That's another way to survive in the music business. Stop putting out all this crap. Say, well, you know, because I got $1 million, I can make you hit. It doesn't work like that. That's my survival.
Put a little, if anybody, can Mr. Brock hear me? Mr. Brock, I want to put a little twist on yours. I want to hear what it was like to survive as a club owner in St. Louis back in the time.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It was a struggle when I first made it to St. Louis because it's the way the living was given down to us. Everything was handed down to us was the last thing that other people didn't want, and we had to take it. But let me tell you this, I want to tell you about the blues. I learned how to play the blues because I've been with the blues people ever since I was 12 years old. Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Jimmy Reed, BB King, Bobby Rush, and I tell you, when we used to have to go out in the woods and clean off a place so we could play the blues, and the Howlin' Wolf was out there one night, and this very little woman, she weighed about 90 pounds weight, and she kept dancing from one man to the other, and one man to the other, so, and the men got jealous of one another, and so they went to the wagon, and you know, there wasn't no cars back then, it was the wagon and horse riding, mule riding, and walk. And he went to the wagon and got a shotgun and started shooting. And when it was all over, they said, where's Howlin' Wolf at? Couldn't find him. and it said, Hollywood said, up here. You had climbed the tree. He was sitting up in the tree like a big bear, holding that tree. But the funny thing about it, after everything over, he was too scared to come down. And they had to help get Howlin' Wolf out of the tree so he could come back down on the ground, and so the show was over. They didn't play no more than that. But anyway, Bobby Rush knows that I've been with him for a long time. I've had privilege to hire every musician from Muddy Waters, Jimmy Reed, Howlin' Wolf, Albert Kane, Little Milton, and Sonny William. He was going with my auntie, so I didn't have no trouble getting him. So if he didn't play, I'd tell Ain't on him. And he come on in there and he started playing for me. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I came from a family of 17. 17, and then I'm the only musician out of the whole crowd. But I want you to know, I only got one sister left and myself. I'm 85 years old today. I'm 85 years old today, and I'm the only musician that I know in the world got a championship gold belt. And I got it to prove it, to show it, and I'll put it up against any blues player, because I still play the blues like Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Jimmy Reed, BB King. BB King called me to his truck and said, Brock, he said, I just want to tell you, he said, take them rings off. He said, I like to get killed by them rings, and you need to go and take them off. And I told him, I said, well, B, I'll tell you what, I won't wear them no more. I went home, told my wife what he had told me, and I got up the next morning, went to the pawn shop, and I pawned every last one of them. I ain't been back yet to get them. I ain't going back to get them either. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. I hear the band saying I don't play. I don't joke. I play what you come to hear, and that's strictly the blues. Yeah. And I do that everywhere I go and when I go. Okay? And I want to thank you for having me on this show tonight. And God bless you. And I hope that I'll be out there tonight with having a jam second. They give me a chance to just play one or two songs for you. Okay? And I hope I can get that chance to show you that I'm not lying about the blues. 2 trains running. Hoochie coochie man. Yeah, you know, all them kind of things.
There we go.
And I want to thank them for having me on this program this evening. I really, really thank them. So, thank you, and we are.
All right, that's wonderful. Howlin' Wolf is a survivor. That's the way to survive. Climb the tree when they start shooting. So, you know, we have taken up so long just getting to know each other, and I want to make sure that the people who come out have a chance to talk with you guys a little bit. So let's jump out to the audience and see what the people out there want to know more about. Questions?
I have one.
Go ahead.
How did Howlin' Wolf get his name?
She said, how did Howlin' Wolf get his name?
So how did Howlin' Wolf get his name?
Well, I heard when he was passing the cemetery and the guy came out from the cemetery. That's what I heard.
Maybe she meant how did Howlin' Man get his name, huh?
Well, Howlin' Man got his name because I waited here with a billy goat one time.
Okay. What was your question over there, Ron?
My question is that talking about survival. I know a lot of you guys. Okay, so we talked about survival, and I know a lot of you guys were on the road. I think one of the things that I would always think of is once you got paid, then you had to keep the money. So what methods did you guys use to make sure you protect the money? Because if you went to a show and you were on the chittlin circuit, nobody was protecting you. I mean, you didn't have no police on your side, you didn't have anything. So, you had to keep your money. That's survival.
You had to collect before you could keep it.
You had to collect
Scrap iron nose.
And then you had to keep the money.
Yeah.
Because there's always somebody trying to get it from you.
Let me tell you about that. Yes, we had some protection. We had some pistols, some knives, and some sticks, and everything else. That's how you protect your money any kind of way.
And some AK-47s, believe it or not. But laying all jokes aside, the way I developed my thing, man, you know, the road manager had all the money. Whether you know it or not. Ain't that right?
Yeah, you had it.
The road manager was responsible for having all of the monies. He paid the hotel bill, he paid everything. A road manager, and this is the truth, until Milton passed, and I left Milton 6 months before he died, I had no personal life, ladies and gentlemen. My life surrounded Little Milton. I had developed a thing where I used to take the money to the bus, put it in a secret compartment where I'm not going to tell you. If Milton wanted to party, I gave him an allowance to spend. I used to tell the guys, hey man, you know you got to go home. You know you got bills to pay. This was me now. Let me give you a draw. When we get back to Memphis or Jackson, Mississippi, or Greenville, wherever we're going, then I'll pay you the rest of your money. So that worked for us. I don't know about nobody else's road manager.
So did you ever have any difficulty collecting?
No, because they know they had responsibilities. See, one thing about the blues musicians that came under the Little Milton camp, if you spent it all and you were hungry, he would feed you, but it's going to cost you twice. Ain't that right, Joe Eagle?
So for the gentleman who owned clubs, Mr. Robinson and Mr. Johnson,
Hold up.
Go ahead.
I wasn't going to tell that.
Okay.
We had certain promoters that didn't want to pay you.
There you go.
Oh yeah, I got mine.
It was hard.
It was hard. Go ahead, Bob.
What we talking about as a whole, you may have yours, but 1,000 others didn't have. We're talking about survival now. You speak about a personal thing. I'm not jumping on you about that. Because what happened with me, how I survived this, most of the time, Jessica can prove it, when you're the band leader like I am, when you give guys raise, most of the time they spend their money in better hotels and better trains and better planes, and they still don't take their money home. So what you're doing, you're billing money to help someone else. It really don't help the kids or the guys you're working for. Maybe y'all miss me. Y'all hear what I'm saying? Because all you're going to do in a hotel is sleep and go to the bathroom, and then you go home. Why you want to pay $500 for a room because it looks good? Y'all hear what I'm saying to you? See, that ain't surviving. That ain't surviving because that's why, everybody know what I'm talking about. That's why most of the black guys now, when they die, you have to go bury them. I'm trying to take care of my business now, so I'm telling you now, it may not be tomorrow, but I don't think you have to bury me. Take care of your business now. I'm not, listen, I drive a regular car, because once I get on the bandstand, you know how I got there? When I was in a bicycle or whatever. You understand what I'm saying? We have to wake up. You spend your money foolishly. Because I'm like Joe. You come here naked, and the naked you should leave.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, we talk about survival. You know, it took me 2 years before I got my place opened up. I've been in business now 40 years. And it's just as hard to survive today as it was 42 years ago.
Thank you, sir.
So what I do every night, every time I go on a trip and I get back home, whatever change I got left in my pocket, whatever amount of money I took that I thought I was going to spend, I got a secret place that I put it. Call it my mad money. When I get back home, I give my wife some money, and I pay my own bills. I don't trust nobody to pay my bills but me. And survival is that thing that even when you sleep, you're still working, you're still counting, you're still thinking. And remember one thing, God is the man.
like to add this right here too. Another way of surviving is education. Make sure you learn and learn. MoreYouKnow.com. The more you know.
The farther you go.
That is the way to real survive. If you want to know anything about Jesse Robinson dealing with it, Google me and look me up before you start dealing with me. Then you know how to deal with me. Education, learning is the next thing. You know, because if you've been broke as long as I am, I'm still searching. And I might luck up and get one of them $1 million like them Bobby's got. You understand? but education is the next thing. Surviving. Surviving is a big realm. There's a lot of things you can do to survive. If I got in a fist fight right now, you know what my survival was? Flight, run.
Well, my daddy used to always say it's always better to say, there you go, than here you lay.
That's survival.
Yes, that's survival. Absolutely. But I got one more thing I want to say. And as far as survival is concerned, Cash, would you stand up for a minute? Everybody give Cash McCall a hand. Yes, this man right here taught me a lot about the business. He taught me how to survive. He was the first one that believed in me enough to turn me loose to work with people like the late Fontella Bass, Will Johnny Taylor, Ted Taylor, just a whole list of people. So, thanks, Cash. Yes, sir.
Okay, we got Mr. Payton out there. It's going to be our last question, and then we're going to call it a day. Mr. Payton, what you got?
It's really not a question, but I would ask Bobby, you remember Al Treat?
Yes.
Bass player Al Treat? He called me the other night and we was talking about this, and when somebody was talking, it reminded me of, is when the club manager gets your rooms. We went all the way to Orange, Texas, and came back to Hollandale. And that fellow, when the gig was over, he had them 3 cribs out there. And me and Hal had to stay in them cribs.
That's right.
The corn crib, but the motel.
That's what it was.
And another thing I want to share, when you're on the road with a person like Bobby, we went to Georgia and worked down in Georgia, and there was a fella, after the college gig was over, wanted to split the club.
Right.
And so that night when the gig was over, the fella come in the room, throw his gun on the bed, put his $300 on the bed, and said, there your money is.
That's right.
Bobby pulled out his gun, threw it on the bed, and said, man, you gonna pay me my damn money.
You so right. I sure did that, man. I sure did that.
Well, thank you guys so much for these lessons in financial management and survival. Let's give everybody a big thank you all very much.
Rush, I didn't know you had no pistol.
Thank you, gentlemen. We've got a lot to do. I know we're running tab behind based on our little free fall at lunch. Now, all y'all got to talking and put this schedule behind, so now we got to stay here and do what we got to do. So don't leave, because we got other people who are attending, and this is information that we're getting filmed. All of it's important for the documentary, so we're going to make the best of it. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. We got one. I'm getting ready to introduce y'all to one of the legends, among legends. And Bill, you didn't even know he was in there.
Who's that? But I come to get on your case right now. Okay. Where's my guitar? I didn't get my guitar, folks. So I'm fussing about it.
Bill, you can't read anyway. No, that's my man, Bill. Bill not go way back. If anybody gonna get a guitar, Bill gonna get one. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I have it's about the end of the stage. I need to get little Ray. What happened to Ray? Oh, Ray back there. I need you and Mickey Rogers. What happened to Mickey? Yeah, Jimmy play some drums for us. And then we're going to bring to the stage the legendary, we call him the Chief. Everybody knows the Chief. Normally he's dressed in a headband that make you look younger, but today he just said he wanted to come out and sing one with us, so I got to get the band together. Is Eddie, tell Eddie to come on out.
Hey, Eddie, come on this side where the steps are. You got to come on the other side. Tell him to go back to the other side where the steps are. Where's Eric? Once again, I'd like to take time to say thank you to all of the sponsors, beautiful people. And Senator Jordan in the house, come on up just for a quick second. We got a very special event taking place tomorrow right here in this same room. And he's going to tell us a little bit more about it. Yeah, come on, Eddie, you on that. You got to go up those steps right there, baby. Rayful is coming up, he's right here.
I got him a guitar.
Gotta survive.
Gotta survive. That's right.
Senator Jordan, everybody.
Good evening. I want you to know that in 2005 we had BB King in the state senate for the first time. BB said that he had been in the 15 heads of state across the world, but he'd never been invited to the state capitol in Jackson, Mississippi. So he was my guest. If you remember that film, Jet Magazine carried where BB King shed tears. So from that point on, after BB King passed away 3 years ago, I decided I'd have the highway named after BB King, since he was born in Leaf Floyd County, a little hamlet called Berkeley. So tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., out on Highway 82 West, right in front of Valley State University campus, we will unveil a sign, a memorial highway of BB King, right in front of this university. And with that point, in conclusion, when life goes tough, then young people can warm their heart about the music that long rows of cotton and sizzling heat produced in the Mississippi Delta. We are proud of the blues. As a state senator, son of a sharecropper, retired science teacher, graduated of this university and other universities, and a state senator and a city councilman in Mississippi, I'm proud to know the heritage of my people. And I always will love you and respect you, what you did, what you were able to do in spite of the difficulty. Thank you, may God bless you. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, we will unveil the sign. We'll have a little ceremony here at 9 o'clock in the morning in this building, according to the president. Then we'll go out there, we'll walk out to the highway and unveil the sign so everybody will be standing around and see the highway named after BB King, who was born here in Berkeley.
And she was married to BB King and traveled for a period of time with him. So, Miss Sue Evans. Yeah, that's her right there. Okay, and then we have Miss Willa Mae Bland, the wife of Bobby Blue Bland, right here next to me. And Miss Shirley Neal, the wife of Rayford Neal, and the mother of Kenny and Ray Neal, and the Neal clan. There's a whole bunch of them. Sit right on in. And actually, you can read more about these ladies in your pamphlet, your book, your program. And right beside me, I have the R&B queen, Miss Dorothy Moore, y'all. In her own right, she recorded a #1 song and is still playing today, 1976, Misty Blue. Yeah, and she's won countless awards, and I believe believe she will be able to talk to you about being on the chitlin circuit, where these other ladies can talk to you about being familiar with the chitlin circuit. Then we have, last but not least, Miss Vicki Baker back over here on the end right here. Yeah, she's one of the young ones like me that's trying to keep this thing going. So let's give it up for Vicki. She's an educator, music educator. She's a band leader at St. Aloysius, and now you're at Vicksburg High School. So let's give it up for Vicki. And she's also an entertainer and a blues singer. So, all right. So I'm going to start probably down where Miss Neal is and then come down. And the questions may be different for each one of them because of their roles. But without the chitlin circuit, many artists like BB and Bobby and Rayford, even people that were in that era, and I'm not up to Miss Dorothy Moore yet because it wasn't that time period when the chitlin circuit was going on, but it was a chitlin circuit before 1960. But it was my question is it was during the Jim Crow era in the early 19th century to the 1960s when you had actually been performing, Miss Moore. Is there a specific story you can share regarding adequate accommodations and pay and all that kind of stuff when you were playing, and some of the things that you experienced in the chitlin circuit that caused you to be the strong artist that you are?
Oh, well, I don't know about strong, but anyway, I started when they had the Freedom Rider era, when you could sing in the white clubs, but I couldn't go in front and sit and have something to eat. I had to eat in my dressing room or wherever they had me waiting before I would go out. And I also sang at different colleges, I believe it was, I won't call the name, but different colleges that I couldn't attend at that time. I could sing in them, but I couldn't attend them, back in those days. But I started out as a background singer. I started singing back up for Johnny Taylor and in the studio on some of those records that you all hear. That's me backgrounding on Johnny and Milton and just a host of them. And Miss Jean Knight, you know that song, what says, oh yeah. I'm one of those singers, one of those young background singers. Well, with Jewel Bass was on there and Jackie Dorsey. The three of us did that background. And we're still getting residuals from that. As a matter of fact, not too long ago, we were in the commercial Raisin Bran. You could hear it at the very beginning when they did that little part. Then, as far as singing, recording, I got discovered by a simple knock at my door. Well, I had been singing around town, doing different talent shows and like that, and that's how I got my money. And when I would get in the studio, they would want one of the girls to sing a little part, maybe, yeah, baby, when someone else would lead another recording stop, and it would be me. And that's when they started noticing my voice, and they said, well, Dorothy, they wanted to record me as an artist.
Well, I'm glad they did.
Oh, thank you.
That's a great hit.
Thank you. Yeah. And Mr. Blue, I'm a little ahead of my time, so go ahead and, if you want to, I stepped up a little too.
Yeah, well, I mean, it seemed like you were doing that before you did Misty Blue, all that. But
oh, yeah, I was doing all of that before Mr. Blue. As a matter of fact, I was singing professionally with two other girls, and we were called the Poppies. And we toured worldwide. That song was entitled Lullaby of Love. The album was too. And the producer was Billy Sherrill, who also produced Tammy Wynette and people like that. He produced us. And we stayed together for 2 years recording. And when that broke up, whatever, I got on my own and started recording by myself. But it took a while. And so it was in 64, 65 when I first signed my professional record deal. And we stayed together for 2 years, and after that, it was November 75 when I recorded, when they released Mr. Blue. But Mr. Blue had been on the shelf for 2 years before they decided to release it.
That was a smart move to release it. Ms. Sue Evans, I know that you actually traveled with BB, and I'd like to hear maybe a couple of things about what happened during the chittlin circuit time that you'd like to share with us.
I guess it's no more than the rest of the musicians traveling on the circuit. It's a lot of times, it was 365 days a year. So it was constant. Sometimes we would find a place to stay, but a lot of times we'd make the schedule so that if he played, say, in Jackson, Mississippi today, we may go to Nashville, and we would go to Nashville and stay there, not stay in Jackson, and then from there to Birmingham or wherever.
Could you speak into the microphone, please? Thank you.
It's kind of, I'm trying to move this chair, but these chairs are heavy. Oh, that's okay, I got it. So it's not that you could stay almost anywhere. We would know where we would stay because we've gone to those places before. And it's not only a matter of where you can stay, but it's a matter of where you can eat. It's a matter of where you get gas in your car, or your truck, or your bus. A lot of places in traveling and during that time, we couldn't use the restrooms. So when we started pumping gas and we couldn't use the restrooms, we just stopped pumping gas and keep on. Not having something to eat and not being able to get food. And a lot of times when your schedule's so far away, you have 500 miles or 600 miles to go from one place to the next place to play. You don't have time to stop and eat. So if we stopped, we tried to stop at a place that had food and gas so that we could buy food and buy the gas, go to the restrooms, of course, and then get back on, and it would save time that way. And if we didn't get food there, then so be it, you just have to keep going. So that's why a lot of times we would have sardines, Vienna sausage, crackers, anything in a can that you can eat because you just couldn't either find the food or you didn't have time to go and get the food. Now I don't know about some of these younger men here who were working during that time, but that's the way we did it.
Right.
And you also kept a blanket and pillows because when you couldn't get to a room, you'd sleep on the bus. I used to think I could sleep sitting up, but you learn to do that real fast.
So how long did you do that? How long did you travel with BB?
About 12 years.
Wow. That's a lot.
But you know, it was very intriguing. It was very interesting. It was very educational. You get to meet so many wonderful people. You get to see so much of the country. It's tiring, and you miss your families because, I don't know, I was out there just about every day. I remember once I went home to see my mother, and I got there that morning, and that night B called and said he wanted me to come back the next day. So my mother got really angry. She said, well, what the hell did you come home for? I said, to see you, and I seen you, so I gotta go. But it had its moments, and it is not glamorous, I can tell you that. All the musicians who worked out on the road, they give up a lot. They give up families, they give up being at graduations, they give up being at the hospital sometimes. They give up birthdays. You know, it's very difficult. It's very hard. It's a hard life. It is not glamorous. I've been on both sides. My mother, Ruby Edwards, was called Red Ruby, and she had a nightclub over in Leland. And that's when she started in the late 30s. So I was born in the club. We lived on, she couldn't, I think, Bobby Rush said, you know, waste money. Well, my mother didn't waste money. She had that club, and she said, well, we're going to live on top of this club, because I'm going to have one note, and I'm not having two notes. So we lived above the club, and I was born in that area. We had 2 bedrooms. My mother had 4 kids. My mother had a bedroom, and I stayed in the bedroom with my sister and my 2 brothers. She started booking different bands, local bands. She started like, there's a group in Vicksburg called the Red Tops. She started with Ike Turner, that was before Tina. Any of the bands that were around locally, and then she started booking some of the other ones, the more, you know, world-known.
Well, thank you. That's a great story. That's interesting. So you had an interesting life in music. Yeah.
I was just telling
in the chittlin circuit.
I was telling Willie Mae, I've been in this my whole life, and I don't play one instrument, and I can't sing. Something's wrong with this. You know, I was born in the club.
Right.
You know?
Well, that brings me to Miss Willie Mae. Did you told me that you had actually toured with Bobby for a while, right? Yeah. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like being with Bobby and how it was on the road with him?
Well, it wasn't easy. It was quite hectic because you have to get used to living out of a suitcase. You have to get used to eating out of a can, sardines out of a can, or tuna with no boiled eggs and pickles to go in. It was just busy and hectic. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody else, but he needed me, and we were friends before we were ever lovers. So I lived with his mother as a child. So,
speak a little bit closer.
Yeah, I met my husband when I was 12, so when I got grown and started touring with him, I was almost like an employee. I just wasn't really getting paid. I wasn't on payroll, but I had to do everything. And then when he became dependent upon medication for hypertension, diabetes and stuff, and with me being a nurse, I had to take care of all of that. And it was just busy and hectic, but it was a good experience. I got a chance to see a lot of places I probably wouldn't have never gone, and he was afraid to fly, so the only way he would take his date in Japan with BB King was that I go with him. He had gone to New York and was just sitting there with no birth certificate and no passport, of course. So I had to get a birth certificate from Memphis and fly into New York to get the passport. Of course, and I wasn't Mrs. Bland either. I was just his friend. So it was just a busy, hectic life, you know, and Bobby had to sing and drive sometime. Bus driver might quit in St. Louis and he's going on someplace else, and he had to carry himself there, and I always admired him that he wasn't only a great singer, he could drive, and he knew what was wrong with the bus, even though he couldn't fix it if something happened. He knew how to help himself. So, but of course, you know, Internal revenue, I had to face, and them, he didn't have to face them. So I was always, you know, in and out, taking care of his business, and then coming back home and having to follow him. And it went on for many, many years. Of course, we didn't marry till 1983. But, you know, I had traveled with him and been with him many years before then and worked for him, so.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mrs. Neal, I can't even imagine you having to travel with Mr. Neal because you had 10 kids to take care of. Tell us your story.
Travel, but I enjoyed being with my kids because I was raised at one in the house. But my mother had 10 kids, but she didn't raise me. So by having just me in the house, I wanted kids and Rachel wanted kids. So I had all 10 of them, and I didn't travel until they got grown. I started going, you know, different places, both, you know, different France and different stuff. But my kids, I was talking about this yesterday when we was coming. I said, my husband was a discipline because I never did. And I said I was so glad of that because with 7 boys, you know, we didn't have to go to jailhouses and get them, you know. And everybody, they loved it in music. So I would give them an hour and a half. It would be longer than that, but I tell them an hour and a half in the evenings to rehearse.
Everybody was playing at one time, everybody in the house played, right?
Look, the boys had 2 bedrooms with bunk beds in them. So they'd open that door. Now they're gonna bring a friend with them. So they have the drum, everything hooked up. I'm in the kitchen cooking. I got to feed all these extra children and washing, you know, so I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed raising my kids and all of them musicians. And I had some tragedy in my life, but, you know, I'm still strong enough to go with that too. Because Jackie, I know everybody know Jackie Neal, which was my baby girl, and she got killed by an ex-boyfriend. But with Ryan and Rafe and Jackie, it was so close. You know, I just lost Noel, but I'm still strong with it, and I enjoyed my kids, and I enjoyed all their friends. Their friends still come by and see me.
Yeah, we give you our deepest condolences for Noel's.
All right.
And Miss Vic Baker down here, I wanted to ask you a question. I know that some people are dual in everything that they do, and I was that way for many years. I worked for the federal government for like 33 years and built a music career at the same time. So I know that you are working in the schools with the band and you're also playing as an artist. How do you find time to do that and make it work on both sides? You have to shut one thing down while you do another one, or how does your mind departmentalize that?
Unfortunately, you're not really able to shut one thing down and to do another. I just call it good multitasking and knowing how to, just get stuff done. I don't know, I have this passion about music, so I got it made up in my mind what I'm gonna do. So I just don't see too many obstacles. I mean, I've gotten off of, because I'm a high school band director, so I've gotten off of the field on Friday nights and just throw my hair together and my clothes together and then jump on the plane and Saturday morning going to a show. I used to background sing for Mr. Willie Clayton. We were on the road a lot. So I found that was good training for me as far as multitasking. Because, we had our wigs, because you ain't have time to get your hair done and all that. So you got to get something out the box, you could and put it on, and that kind of stuff. But it was good training for me when I became my own artist, of course. It was good training for me because it just taught me how to multitask and to get it done. Plus it's good when you have support. I keep it real with my administrators and people I'm working with. I'm like, you guys know what I do, so I just changed schools. I a Catholic school, St. Aloysius, for 30 years. Yeah, I've been a band director for 30 years. And by the way, I'm a graduate of Mississippi Valley State University. So I just changed schools, and now I'm at the Vicksburg High School, which is a public school. And when they were asking me about coming to work there, I was like, sure, but now you know what I do, you know I can't. You know. One thing about music, and I just had to give my brother this speech because my brother used to play keyboard for me, but now he's an artist in his own right. And I try to tell him, you have to place people in your life that understand music and appreciate music. If you got somebody that does not understand the system, it's just not gonna work. I mean, so one thing about music, when you're passionate about it, you don't really have a choice of, am I gonna do it? I mean, it's like your heartbeat. You have to do it. Because it's what you think about before you go to bed at night. It's what you think about while you sleep. I've written so many songs in my sleep, and I just get up and, you know, I keep something by my bed so I can jot it down, especially the older I am. You know, you can't remember everything. Just so if a hook comes to you, you gotta stop and jot it down, you know. It's just that serious for me. I just have made in my mind that it's something I want to do, and I'm going to stick to it. Let me say something, though, about the chittlin circuit. When Dr. Sanders asked me about being on the panel, I was thinking, what am I really going to speak about? I didn't realize Teeny was going to ask me that question, but that's fine. But I wanted to talk about now chittlin circuit versus everything I've been listening to today. One of the things that really gets on my nerves with it today is track shows. Anybody know what I mean? Yeah. Track shows. I mean, I have to do them, you know, it's a survival thing y'all were talking about. You have to do them to keep your name out here to survive, but it really irks me that a lot of people, a lot of promoters now, the first thing they want to do when they call you is they want to do a track show. Well, I have a master's degree in music, so I'm all about real horns and real this and real that. You know, so I say something to him, but I'm knowing, you know, if the money is funny and it's not there or whatever, I get it. I do get it, but that's just one of the things that just that's kind of like my little pet peeve thing. It just kind of drives me crazy. And, you know, chittlin circuit these days, all of the track shows. I'm hoping people will get back to the real music. When I teach my students, I also teach like general music classes and stuff. I try to give them the history of music, and to, you know, with kids you have to find a way to reach them, and you can't reach all of them the same way. You have to reach them different ways, but you know, it all comes into play with being a teacher. But I found that what I do is I find one of the best songs that they think they love, and then I'll tell them where it really came from. So I'll let them play their little version, and then I'll play the real version. And then that's when their eyes pop open and say, okay, because I'm saying, what you guys listen to now is just kind of soup and warmed over. This is a real version when such and such recorded it or whatever. So learn your history about music. Learn about these different genres. All these kids like the acid rock and the blah, 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 and all this stuff. Everything stems from the blues and the gospel and into the jazz and so forth. But like I said, you have to give, if you got a family, a big family, you have to give due to everybody. Like with my sisters and brothers, you can't mention the rest of them without mentioning me because I'm the oldest. So you gotta come down for me, and then you gotta work your way down. It's the same thing with music. You can't mention one thing without mentioning the where it really came from, the history of it, the backbone of it, the origin of it. So if you're gonna talk about it, talk about all of it. So that's what I try to do as an educator. Which I'm probably retiring soon. It'll be great to just be on the road, like you know, full time. That'd be great. I sing a lot. I'm going a lot of weekends. I just make it happen. I just thank God that I have someone in my life that understands that. You know, be glad when you see me, because I'm gone. So I'm coming back. This is the main thing. So So anyway, I want to say again, Mississippi Valley State University, Dr. Sanders, all of you guys, I look forward. You don't have to ask me to ever say a word when I come here. I just look forward to listen to everybody else and to hear all these great stories. And so I can go back and take it to my students and enlighten them. And I want to say to the ladies, all of you are gorgeous. And I'm glad to be on the panel with you, Ms. Dorothy Moore. You know I love you. I've seen some of your stuff too. I've seen some of your stuff. Yes. And I'm hoping we can do something together sometime. Wouldn't that be good?
That would be good.
Well, thank you.
Well, I know we don't have very much time left, and I was just going to ask each one of the wives up here, and Dorothy Moore, if she could maybe share 1, 2 sentence things about their husband that we don't know, or that we should know, that we never knew. look at Miss Neal. I mean, anything special, you know, like they wore 2 left socks, or you know. And then we'll take a couple questions from the audience.
But I hate to say it. Ray was
Don't embarrass Ray now.
Ray was hard over in Germany, and I always put his clothes together, tie the socks, and put them in the jacket. And so he come back home, he just be dressed all the pictures, I just be so embarrassed. So this time he went to Japan to teach a harmonica class. And I did the same thing, and I fussed so much about it. He had, one of the pictures he had on, he had a purple suit, but he had the purple pants on, a green shirt, but I had to go with another pair of pants. He had on some red socks. When I get the pictures back, I'm so embarrassed, and I said, well, Reverend, he said, look, I ain't worried about that. I said, well, did you just wear what I put there for you? He said, oh, you have everything on. I said, well, that's the way I want it. But he come back with some pictures that would make you all right.
Well, I'm not married, but I was married for 18 years, and I have 2 children. Well, they're not young adults, a daughter and son. But I'd like to tell you something about Mr. Blue that you probably don't know. I went in the studio, and my producer called me to listen to this song to see if I like it. And it was Mr. Blue. And so I told him that I love it, you know. And so he told me to go in. He always had this rhythm section in the studio because they didn't have very little work coming through the doors. I think, as a matter of fact, they were getting ready to go file bankruptcy or something. That's what I heard. And so he said, well, go in and get your key, Dorothy, and you cut it. We'll cut it. And so I went in and got my key, and I recorded Mr. Blue in 1 take. And when they released it 2 years later, they put it on the B-side of a 45. And I'd like to thank all the radio DJs and the radio listeners for making me who I am today, because you all did it. Radio personalities, you need radio. This has made me. And I'm so happy about that. And that's what happened as far as that. When it was released, in 3 months later, it was nominated for a Grammy. And I have been nominated for 4 Grammys.
Y'all need to give it up.
My husband loved his mom, and I knew I had it made. When he loved his mama, I knew if he was crazy about his mama, he was gonna love me too.
So for all those women that thought something different, He loved him some Little Man.
Yes, he did. I could vouch for that.
Okay, I was thinking about some of the times when we were traveling. And you know, you can't really time traffic down to the nth degree till you get there. So some days we would get into cities a little bit early, and we would love to go to the movies. So as soon as we get to a town and they had a movie, we would sneak off and hide in the movies and just look at it. He just loved movies. He didn't care if it was cartoons or Superman or whatever. He just loved going to the movies. And the other thing he loved was after, like when we go to places in the city like New York and different places, after you get off work, he's, you know, too hyped up to go to sleep. Most musicians, they got that time clock problem sometimes. And so we would go bowling. He loved bowling. And we would bowl until about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, have breakfast and go to bed. That's the musician's schedule. And the last thing I think you guys would really get a kick out of, one day we were in New Orleans and we had a little extra time off, and so he looked at me and he said, "I'm going fishing." He loved to fish. He didn't care if it was deep sea fishing, fishing in a creek with a small boat, and I'm afraid of snakes, so I don't do that kind of stuff. So he says, "I'm going fishing." So I said, "Okay." He said, "See you later," and he's walking out the door. I said, "See you later? You're not going to change clothes?" He had on a silk suit. He says, "Woman?" That's what he called me. He says, "Woman? I don't have anything else to put on." So he went fishing in a silk suit.
Is there something about you that we don't know?
Yes, I like to fish.
Oh, okay.
I'm a Louisiana country girl. As a matter of fact, one of my new singles that's going to be on my new CD coming out is called Honey Hole. All about fishing, or not. Is it right, Mr. Bobby Rush? At night fishing.
Okay, we have a little bit of time to take some questions from the audience. And, okay.
This is for Vicki Baker. We're at a historically black college right now, and I know back in the day, you may have been a little too young for this, but did you utilize the Green Book?
I think I'm a little too young for that.
Dorothy Moore?
I think, not that I'm young, but yeah.
Dorothy Moore, the Green Book was put out, it's a black publication that was put out in 1937 by Victor Green, and it depicted and showed black people where to stay. You talk about safe places and places that you could get gas and things like that, and that was a book that was put out in 1936.
Right, yeah, that's before me. Okay. But I will tell you this, let me say this. I told you guys I went to school here, Mississippi Valley State University, and I was thinking about it when Dorothy was talking about playing in some of the universities where she could play but she couldn't attend. And I remember when I graduated from Valley in the fall of '84, I received a letter to honor me with a full scholarship to go to Ole Miss, the University of Mississippi. And I can remember not telling my mom, rest her soul, that I didn't want to go. And I was like, I don't really want to go, but she was like, well, people have paved the way for you to be able to go where you want to go and where you were invited to go. And says, I'm inviting you to, and giving you a full scholarship to go to school, you're going to have to go, you don't have a choice. It's your responsibility to go. So that's what I end up going. So, that's because of people like you, and people like you guys that played in some of these places and you couldn't attend, you couldn't, so thank you so much.
One other thing from Dorothy Moore, a little story. I work for the Jackson Advocate newspaper, which is the oldest black newspaper in the state, and I interviewed some musicians in Jackson one time, and they told me a story about Dorothy Moore. they said that Dorothy Moore was too young to get into the Alamo, and that she would come in there with her mother and win the talent show and have to be escorted home early because she was too young to stay late with the musicians.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, my great-grandmother was my chaperone, who also raised me, and I just thank her for everything that I'm doing today. Because of her, I wouldn't be where I am today, because she would escort me down to the Alamo every Wednesday night to do that, to do the talent show. And it really was a learning experience for me. I call it my classroom for what I'm doing today. That's what the Alamo were for me, to me.
Okay, we have enough time for one more question.
I have a question to the ladies on the panel here. Miss Neal, 10 children. I'm from a family of 14. I know you got the right stuff. But to all the ladies on the panel, if you would, just give me one word or two, if you can, right quick, to the young women in the business today or in life in general. Give them something that they need to know from your experience.
Well, I don't know, because I see a lot of young women now get those kids, and it really goes to my heart, because I take very good care of mine. And I didn't leave them for to be babysit for nobody. I kept them myself. And I take care of my kids, and Ray was a good provider. He brought it in, and I take care of the house. Yeah, but I mean, the young women now, because I got one of my little great-granddaughters, that her mama got 3 from one of Jackie's sons, and she don't have any of them. Wow. I got one.
That's an epidemic.
You know, that's the way they're doing it. But I mean, when you get those kids, you got to put them first. Yeah. And that's what I did. Yeah.
Well, my advice to the young people is to get an attorney. When you get those contracts, that there is, here is, and B party, A party, get an attorney.
Mine is stay true to yourself.
One more question, ma'am. Since those are twins and they the same, so can I just ask?
Wait, as soon as everybody answers her question, then I'll let you do it, then we're done. Okay, that's cool. That's valid. Okay.
My advice would be that they would have to be dedicated and have an awful lot of patience.
My advice is not to let anybody define you.
That's right.
Failure is not an option. And whatever you're experiencing that's getting you down, it's only temporary. Tomorrow's another day. You can always continue and get up. Don't give up.
I say be passionate about what you do. If you can't get it the right way, just wait so you can get it. Get it your way.
Okay, our one more question, and then we're done.
I was a little girl when I used to listen to my mother and my father. They would play the blues growing up as a child. And I remember when they would have like the quartet groups and they would be singing. And so people would travel from all over to go and listen to the quartet singers. So my question is, and it could relate to Mr. Bobby Rush or to the mothers and the wives up on the panel, or if anyone could just answer my question. So still as a child, my mother let me and my sister travel at a very young age, and we sang with Reverend James Cleveland. So we heard blues in all aspects. So did blues really migrate from the fields, you know, when everybody was picking cotton back in those days, you know, starting from then and then coming on up because of what they were feeling, and then they brought it on up into this era because in the 90s, that's when I started traveling and I started working with Al Heyman. So I traveled in the 90s on the concert tours. So my question is, blues and R&B, gospel, it's all blend, but do you think that we can all like come together and do like a one big giant convention panel with all aspects of the music and bring everybody together? Or do you consider that the same, like quartet singing, blues singing, is that kind of like all the same?
That's a pretty loaded question. Blues gave birth to all music, so there you go.
And for the quartet singing, gospel-wise, I grew up on that. My dad was a quartet gospel singer. And a lot of the same things that happen on the chittlin circuit, like we were talking about, is how happened in the church. Right. And with the quartet singing, it's just the same, and sometimes worse. So to me, it's all, music is a universal language. And I think it all intertwines. I think it's all together. You put it together how you want. Like they were talking about Ray Charles and infusing the gospel sounds of a lot of chord changes are the same. Music is the same. I mean, it just, sometimes, even now with the new people, it depends on the lyric. You have to really listen to the lyrics. And you got to listen hard to figure out if this gospel is whatever it is. So to me, it's all the same. I don't know. That's what I would say.
I hope that answered her question, but I want to thank everybody on this panel. Now let's give it up for them. We got a lot of good information. I mean, I could have went into some music history, but that's not my job today. My job is for these ladies to speak and reveal some things to us that we didn't know. So thank you so much. We appreciate you. And you can take your name in your award.
This is wonderful for me, and I know we've got a lot going on, and I already know the time will tell this song's story. We got a wonderful evening planned at Club Ebony. I've got 2 more panels that we're supposed to do, but this is what I'm making a decision to do. We have a ride that we took Willie Henderson out of Chicago, Michael Frank came down through Memphis. We had a wonderful filming throughout the Gibson Guitar Company. We've got, I've got King Edward, I've got Jimmy Mays in from Jackson. Also, I guess on the trip was my dear friend, one of my mentors I adopted was Walter Riley King. And Walter and I, go way back. But this is what I thought about doing, since just most of the participations are here, and we have to have the documentation from the people. I want to do the same thing we did on the bus ride, if we can get the interviews. And I know everybody else will be taking it. So I have several interviews that we have to do of people. Jimmy Mays is one. King Edward is the other one. And who else is? Oh yes, Cash McCall. Cash, I want you to do something special for me. I want you, if you can you come up this way? We got 2 people in here that I've learned to respect on a whole nother level, and that's Eddie Clearwater, who I didn't know much about until we started talking on the phone, and this is Cash McCall, who I was introduced to through Mark here from Memphis. But I want you to do one thing. I just want you to address the audience and let them know exactly what's going on in your life today.
I was quite surprised to see my old friend from Chicago, Willie Henderson. We were both awfully young back then, but it was a lot of fun. And hey, I've been listening to a lot of people talk up here, and I got to tell you something. Music in Chicago was hard because you had people like Wolf, who I recorded with, Muddy, I recorded with, and wrote songs for these people. And to find out that all the money that their records were making, they were not getting. Willie Dixon, who I played a long time for, and who taught me a lot, records were making money all over the paper. His songs were making money. All of that was being stolen from him. Muddy Waters, the same thing. And I was right there looking at this go on. I got to tell you something. It hasn't changed. It's getting worse now. But you know what? You protect yourself. They got ways. They got, you write a song, register the letter and mail it to yourself and don't bother it no more. Because it will stand up in court very well. And instead of being a crybaby, take care of business. I've got to go to court. I found some lawyers in Nashville from Music Loves. They're going to take care of business. These people have been stealing from me since 1976. But now I have a chance to get that money, and I know very well how to protect myself now. For all of you registered brothers here, and Willie, it's good to see you. And some neighbor friends of mine up there, darling, how you doing? And tell Chelsea I said hi. Bless y'all.
All right, we got Cash. We're gonna do the interviews. We're gonna get that set up, so y'all be patient with us on that. But we got one last surprise, and I can't do without. I gotta hear Dorothy Moore sing. Dorothy, are you gonna do that for us, baby? She's gonna come to the stage. Every time I hear Dorothy sing, I'm almost in tears, Bobby. You know, yeah, you come on. Come on up. You on this one?
My brother, Melvin Hendricks.
House cat.
Yeah, better known as House Cat, will be playing on keyboard. And Cheryl Holly on sax. And I'm going to sing that song that made it happen for me, simply entitled Misty Blue. To forget you. Heaven knows I've tried. And baby, when I say that I'm glad we're through, deep in my heart, I know I've lied. I've lied. I've lied. Baby, heaven knows I've lied. Oh, honey, it's been such a long, long time. Looks like I get you off of my mind, but I can't. Just the thought of you turns my whole world misty blue. Break it down for me. I want to call the one I love. Can I do that, y'all? I said I want to call the one I love. Can I do that? Heaven knows I said, baby, baby, oh, I can't forget you. Turns my whole world. Can we do that again? I said, baby, baby, thank you very much. Thank you.
Like I said, I couldn't have paid anybody what they're worth to do this. So this is like me calling aces and friends and saying, y'all come and let's celebrate the legacy of the blues through BB King. I met a beautiful brother here, and I forgot your name. Butch. Yeah, Butch talked to me about something very serious and something I've been thinking about for years. And I know we got a strong connection. I really want to follow up on it, but there's a lot of information that we need to think through when we start talking about the next symposium. I'm open, guys. We got contacts. Please try to keep in touch with each other and try to keep in touch with me. Talk to me about what you really feel, what you think something like this could be at a historically black college, and what it means to continue to tell the story
and get it documented properly. So I'm open, and I want to make sure that that part is heartfelt because it's coming from me. Yes, Digger Blues.
I just want to commend you, Alfonso Sanders.
So I'm hoping with my newfound friends. Yes, sir.
Can I just say this too? You know, we come, we all have a great time. It's great. We say good words. But our boss needs help. He needs help. Okay? He needs help to make and ensure that this continues. So with any sources of funding that you have directed toward our boss, please do that. People that you know or your own money, whatever.
Thank you, Dr. Smith.
That's what counts.
We're trying to make it count. Right here at Mississippi Valley State University, it's a good a place as any to do what we're doing, and I'm committed to it. Tonight is going to be very special, so don't miss what we're about to do at Club Ebony, because it's going to be something you've never seen. You thought you heard Eddie sing right here on the blues. It's going to be, we're going to be dangerous tonight. So make sure you come out, be able to get you a spot. And it's open to the public, so that's been advertised, and hope to see you soon. We have a few interviews that we'll be doing while everybody else is clearing out. Tomorrow we have a very special event that was told by Senator Jordan that we'll be naming the highway to BB King Highway. This will be Highway 82 West. And it'll be done in this very auditorium tomorrow, and there's some film footage that they're going to show from the museum and so forth, and some speakers from the state will be doing that, and they'll unfold the actual sign tomorrow that's out on 82. So my hat's off to you, and thank you so much once again for helping me to do this. All right.